This art, which can be appreciated by people of all ages, is heard from a television set where two very young friends are sitting. The boy asks his friend behind the TV what he is watching there. The friend replies that the dancers on TV are called b-boys. On the screen, in the spotlight, to fiery music, b-boys perform their fiery dances. Seeing this, young Puck falls in love and starts dancing every day. His life is filled with countless training sessions. Soon enough, dancing becomes everything in his life. He wanted to become a nationally known b-boy and continue to win. He strived to shine better than everyone else, thinking that it would always be like that. But in an instant his light went out. Puck is at the computer in his room, aggressively clicking on the keyboard and swearing at the monitor screen. More and more insults are poured onto the monitor with a freeze frame of the end of the game. In a fit of anger he turns away and throws his headphones on the bed. At that moment, the door to his room opens and a package of snacks flies into the back of his head. His neighbor demands that he shut up and not interfere with his preparation for the civil service exam. Now he is an ordinary high school student, lying on his bed and crunching crackers. During the competition, the stage equipment collapsed and crushed his leg. He can no longer dance, and he began to live a normal life. Opening his mouth wide in a yawn, surrounded by many schoolchildren, Puck heads off to study. Even after getting to school, he still wants to sleep terribly. While Puck is standing at the locker, his trouser leg rises, and his prosthetic leg is faintly visible from under it. After looking around, Puck hastily adjusts his trouser leg and goes to class. The lesson passes, and the students leave for lunch with the bell. Puck is in no hurry to leave. He looks thoughtfully out the window, remaining at his desk. Left alone, Puck finally gets up and goes out. Two guys come into the classroom and walk towards him, chatting with each other about something. Puck bumps shoulders with one of them on the way out. Looking up, he catches the angry gaze of a thug head and shoulders above himself. They separate. Puck decides that he is too scary and it is better to ignore him. Excitement is visible on his face. The thug turns to his frail comrade, asking who this guy is and why he is limping, then explains to the thug that because of dancing, Puck's leg was amputated in high school. Puck shudders, realizing that they are talking about him. He listens to the conversation. The thug expresses pity, finally understanding what happened to his leg. They call him poor and laugh. Puck is furious at what he heard, but still leaves the class. He himself does not like limping because of the prosthesis. These thoughts, and the thought that he will have to live without dancing, do not leave his head. He walks through the park, talking to himself. Puck is annoyed that they say whatever they want. He notes that such words make him angry. Things gradually heat up. His face is distorted with anger. He can't stand such people. Memories flash through his head where he stands with a poster at a big dance competition. Then Puck fought with real professionals in his field and defeated them. Now, because of the prosthesis, he cannot dance. Thoughts about this plunge him into despondency. From powerlessness, Puck curses dirtily at his feet. His gaze finally faded. Puck can't believe that he might have already given up. He is brought out of his thoughts by a picture right along the way. The guys who met in class today surrounded a fragile girl and were talking to her about something. The thug tells the girl that she said that she would give 5 million won if he showed his physical strength. She replies that she just asked if he plays sports. The brute shows off his muscles and smiles. He tells her to look at his body for herself, that he spends a lot of money to maintain it. The girl replies that she won't give her money for it. She's not fascinated by fake muscles, and people who think it's cool are ordinary fools. Her words anger the thug. Veins appear on his face from anger. Hanging over the girl, he glares menacingly at her and demands to repeat what he said. He shouts how she dared to insult his beautiful body, and at that time a heavy stone flies into his head. The brute falls and hits his head on the ground with a crash. His comrade only manages to curse in surprise and receives the same stone in the back of his head. The two offenders are lying on the ground unconscious. The girl comes closer, examines them. She is nervous and in complete confusion about what just happened. Puck stands to the side, throwing another stone in his palms. His face expresses irritation. He says that their brains have already turned into muscles. Having thrown away the stone, Puck approaches the girl, asks if she is okay. The girl thanks him and confirms that she is okay. Puck asks her why she communicated with these goons. The girl replies that she communicated with them on the recommendation of the club, which surprises Puck. He notes that it is dangerous. In the middle of the conversation, the girl screams, warning Puck of the danger. The big man stands up to his full height and already raises his fist over Puck's head, and with a slight movement to the side, he easily dodges a blow to the back. Puck makes fun of the thug, saying that in this way he will quickly run out of steam. In response, the angry big man makes it clear that Puck won't get away with this. Taking a closer look, the thug recognizes Puck. He notes that Puck is the lame woman who lost her leg during the dance. Puck is angry at the comment repeated by the goon for the second time. Smiling evilly, Puck says that the thug's face has begun to irritate him greatly. The big man defiantly hits his palm with his fist, asking what dance technique Puck plans to defeat him with. Puck replies that the most popular technique of b-boys, thread. The Puck on the ground spins quickly around an axis, explaining that this is a movement in which the arms and legs move back and forth, like threading a thread through an eye. His specialty is doing freezing by lifting his legs and damaging the thread. The goon looks at him sideways in bewilderment, and Puck finally declares his readiness. Raising an embittered look at the thug, Puck abruptly storms towards him. He takes off from his place and, spinning vertically in his body, directs his leg towards the surprised face of his opponent. A moment later he stands up on his hands, his leg leaves the ground and with a sharp blow his heel meets the bully's nose. For a moment, Puck freezes in an unnatural position, standing on his hands, catching the girl's frightened gaze. Finally, having completed his dance trick, Puck closes his eyes with a proud expression on his face, crosses his legs to the side and says the name of the trick, freeze. Puck plops down and sits down on the ground, complaining that this is all complete crap. His legs hurt terribly. He's worried about whether his prosthesis has been damaged. He muttered that he should try again at home. Looking up at the girl, after a couple of moments of silence, he declares that he is leaving home. The girl asks to wait a minute, stopping him. She thanks Puck for his help. Their eyes meet. Looking at him, the girl notes the smoothness of Puck's movements and asks if he's interested in workout. Puck turns around in surprise. They stand under the light of a lantern. Looking into each other's eyes, the girl smiles, while Puck gazes into her eyes. After some time, Puck abruptly turns away and refuses. The girl is left alone in the park, completely confused. Puck goes home. Puck comes home, washes his face, and reminisces about whether he did basic physical training when he was dancing. Already at home, sitting at the computer and eating snacks, Puck remembers a girl. She is a first grader from his school. He wonders how long she has been in that club. He decides to see how she will be at school. Puck spends another sleepless night playing the computer, aggressively tapping on the keyboard, and is distracted from his studies by a shout from behind the door that he has to go to school. Once again he goes to school, and on the way he complains about how he wants to sleep. He stops in the park, wearily exclaiming about what a blissful morning it is in the park. Puck falls tiredly onto the bench, complaining that he doesn't plan to go anywhere after school anyway. He goes to sleep for a couple of lessons. Awakening finds Puck as the pigeons who have taken a fancy to him begin to coo in his face. Having dispersed the pigeons, he rushes off the bench and immediately grabs the phone, completely unaware of how much time has passed. Realizing that the time has come to 4 o'clock, he exclaims rude abuse. Puck is concerned that he can't go home now, otherwise he will get a scolding from his mom. Glancing at the sports ground nearby, he notices a girl at the horizontal bar. She is standing by the equipment, dressed in a sports uniform. Her hair is pulled into a ponytail. It is clear that she has come for training. Taking a closer look, he recognizes her as yesterday's girl from the park, which involuntarily escapes his lips. After briefly examining the apparatus, the girl grabs it while jumping and begins training, slowly pulling herself up. Puck notes the beauty of the girl, watching her workout, and catches himself thinking that it would be nice to take a walk with her. At one point, Puck's face is distorted with surprise. He is watching something incredible. Before his eyes, the girl, having made an exit on the apparatus, stretched her legs vertically upward without any recoil. He does not believe that this is possible. However, having performed a rotation on one arm, the girl breaks away from the projectile into the air. Puck falls into a stupor. She flew right before his eyes, performing a flip in the air. Just barely straining, her hand reaches back and just as deftly grabs the horizontal bar, then successfully supporting her own weight. She exhales with relief, saying that she managed to do a somersault better than yesterday. She smiles tiredly. Turning her head, she met the gaze of a blushing and delighted Puck. His eyes literally shone with 2 stars. Out of surprise, the girl gets scared. screams and flops off the projectile, hitting her butt on the ground. Puck says that it was amazing. After looking closely, she recognizes him as an acquaintance from yesterday. Puck continues to praise her flip, calling it amazing, and he wants the same thing himself. His memories return to what he saw as a child, the b-boy dance that his brother showed him. These movements and feelings that he thought were cool, he felt again while looking at her. He wants to try circuit training and asks her to teach him. At that moment, Puck felt that his former radiance had returned again. From the kitchen on the first floor, Dong Ho's mother shouts, inviting him to dinner. Puck doesn't answer. His angry mother comes up the stairs to his room. She swears at Puck and his computer, threatening to sell it. Approaching Puck's room, Mom discovers a note on the monitor screen standing by the door. She rips off the note, and, after reading it, turns around in surprise. Puck asks not to disturb and not open the door. He gets himself into shape. Meanwhile, Puck is in his room practicing push-ups hard. Through force he counts down through his teeth, 30, 33. Having finished the push-ups, Puck sits on the floor and struggles to catch his breath, noting that this won't be easy. He remembers his meeting with the girl in the morning on the site. Hearing then about Puck's desire to join the club, the girl beamed with joy, unable to believe it. Then she bowed and gratefully asked Puck to take care of her. He didn't even immediately understand that they were talking about joining the club. She introduced herself. Her name was Kwon Genie. Kwon recognized him as a second-grade high school student. Puck asks without formalities, because he just wants to work out with her. Pointing his finger at her, Park says that Kwon will be like a teacher to him. Puck explains to her misunderstanding that at school they don't address teachers by name either. Kwon thinks he's kind of weird, but agrees to tell him the basics. Pak emotionally asks her to tell her how she managed such a move on the apparatus, and whether he can do it too. Park has to agree with Kwon's answer. This element is very difficult, and he will have to practice a lot. Kwon, rubbing his palms, suggests first assessing Park's abilities. Kwon suggests that Park start small, doing push-ups and pull-ups according to his endurance. Full of enthusiasm, Puck starts doing push-ups without showing any outstanding results. Pak doesn't do any better with pull-ups. He also has difficulty performing this exercise. Having failed to achieve results, Park droops and complains about his lack of talent. Kwon calms him down. It is difficult for him to perform new movements. Park turns to Kwon, asking if this is enough to imitate her movements. Hearing this, Kwon realizes that she has hastened to conclusions and decides to show him the basics. Kwon invites Park to take a look. She will show him one element. Having climbed onto the apparatus, Kwon explains that first you need to hang on the horizontal bar. She swings on the apparatus like on a swing, explaining her actions to Puck. Along with the next swing, she slightly bends her arms and tenses them. With effort, she pulls herself up on the apparatus, lifting her head over the horizontal bar. A moment later, she carries half her body over the horizontal bar and tucks her knees. Following this, Kwon smoothly stretches himself vertically on the horizontal bar, performing a forceful exit. Looking at her, Puck notes that it doesn't look difficult, but he himself doubts that he can do the same. Having heard from Kwon that for this he needs to do pull-ups at least 10 times, he is extremely surprised, because he cannot do pull-ups even once. Puck listens carefully. This is the very beginning. He needs to build muscle, otherwise they won't be able to move forward. She says honestly that this is a bit difficult for a beginner, but for now Pak just needs to learn how to just pull himself up. Puck looks at the projectile and realizes that he can't do anything without a foundation. Seeing him in thought, Kwon panics and clutches her head, thinking that she said too much. Pak himself is determined and everything is clear to him. If he manages to make a way out by force, then he will be able to repeat her movements. Kwon is surprised, confused, confirms Park's assumption, but adds that first he needs to be able to pull himself up. With the knowledge of how, it's only a matter of time for Puck, and he replies that it will be easy. Puck continues to stubbornly do push-ups in his room, thinking about how to build up his stamina and move further. Meanwhile, Mom is standing in the kitchen, thinking about what Puck has been doing in the room for several days now. They shout about delivery from behind the door, and behind the front door Mom finds an exhausted courier surrounded by many boxes. Puck, coming up from behind, explains to his mother that this is a delivery for him. The surprised mother asks what it all means. Puck asks his mom to help him move the boxes, and they start moving them to the second floor. A tired mother leans against the wall and complains that she sold his computer, and he is still buying something. Puck quickly collects his purchase, which turns out to be a pull-up machine. Mom is surprised what Pak is doing and why he suddenly started playing sports. He shoos her away and says that he will come down by meal time. Inspecting the assembled horizontal bar, Pak motivates himself by the fact that practice will not come to him on its own. With the confidence that he just needs to tighten his muscles, Pak confidently jumps onto the apparatus. The attempt was unsuccessful. With his arms spread wide, Puck was simply shaking ridiculously on the horizontal bar. After some time, a joyful cry from Puck is heard from the window onto the street, having managed to do one pull-up. A new school day begins, the school bell rings and it's lunchtime. Kwan takes notes in her notebook in her class, thinking that to create a club, she needs more members and needs a substitute. A week has passed since she met Puck. She sees him as a little unusual, but a good guy. He is weaker than she thought. It seemed that he would have good endurance. She considers such a decision careless. Her thoughts about the club are interrupted by Puck, shouting, calling her a teacher, and asking if she has free time. With this action, Puck makes her blush. She is completely confused and red as a tomato. Kwan runs up to Park and quickly pushes him out of the office, leaving them alone in the corridor. Kwan asks Park not to call her a teacher outside the club. Park doesn't understand what's going on and replies that he didn't come to argue. Park tells Kwan that he has finally achieved success and pumped up his muscles, which greatly surprises her. They reach the training ground and Puck jumps onto the apparatus. For some time, Puck just slowly swings, holding on to the horizontal bar. Finally, swinging his outstretched legs, Pak gradually gains the amplitude of swings on the horizontal bar. Having swung sufficiently, Puck draws his legs in and sharply pulls himself up. Having pushed himself up to his chest over the horizontal bar, Pak repeats the procedure in his head. He needs to push a little. Gritting his teeth, Puck forcefully pushes himself up and makes a forceful exit with a cry of victory. Hovering on the projectile, Park asks Kwan, frozen in surprise, if he did everything right. Unable to believe what she saw, Kwan replies that he did everything right. She is surprised at how quickly he succeeded. Kwan is amazed, even though this is just the basics. But in just a week he achieved the result that she had been working towards for 3 months. Satisfied, Puck declares that even if this is only once so far, next time there will be much more. Park's hands were tired of holding on, and he collapsed to the ground with a roar. An excited Kwan ran up to him. Kwan looked down and examined Park's legs with even greater surprise. When Park asks if everything is okay, Kwan draws attention to his leg. Park, chuckling, rolls up his prosthetic leg and reassures Kwan, saying that he was just injured once. She is amazed that he was able to achieve such a result with his prosthesis. Finally collecting his thoughts, Kwan asks Park a single question about how he did it. Kwan remembers how they started a week ago, when Park couldn't do even one pull-up. She's surprised at how much he's progressed. Even if it's the basics, it's still very hard. Kwan is amazed that he was able to achieve all this with just one leg. Kwan turns to Park, asking if he has done anything before. Puck tells her that a long time ago he danced and trained his endurance for some time. Park shares that he was inspired to do this by the skills she demonstrated a week ago. Park notes to Kwan that it looks like he pulled his legs hard before the climb. When she almost climbed up, the force she lifted with her legs was similar to using her arms to get up. In conclusion, Puck explains that if he hadn't seen this part, he probably wouldn't have gotten up. He was lucky. Kwan doesn't believe in his luck. He just figured out the force lifting trick just by seeing it. Now she has an incentive to train him because she sees signs of hard work. Kwan says it's amazing. She thought he was an unusual person from the very beginning. Smiling kindly, Kwan praises him for his efforts, saying that he is amazing. Hearing the praise, Puck is discouraged. He remembers pictures of the past in which he was also praised and admired. Having emerged from the memories soon enough, he modestly replies that it may be so. Kwan, confirming his words, gets up and says that now she wants to form a club as soon as possible in order to enjoy training. Picking up her enthusiasm, Pak stands up to his full height and exclaims about creating a friendly team and club with her. Kwan stands silently, lost in thought, and Park asks what she plans to name the club. Kwan's answer completely discourages Park. She doesn't know and wants to name the club Happy School Life. After a while, they leave and head to a cafe, where they take a table. When asked about the club, she sheepishly replies that she hasn't even thought about what to do next. It's clear from the story that when she entered high school, her goal was to start a club. Park listens to Kwan's story. There is no clear distribution, but you can think about it when there are more participants. She still can't find the members of the club and admits that she almost gave up, but her appa pushed her to continue. Kwon approaches Park about his reasons for taking up the sport. Puck fusses, answering that he was just bored. She was the real reason. After asking if she's seen his prosthetic, Park confirms and talks about her amputation after a dancing accident. He remembers that then he was small and did not know what to do. He realized that he was not capable of anything except dancing. All his friends abandoned him, and all that remains from the past are prosthetics. Those around him call him a legend, but this only makes him worse. After this story, his world lost all its colors, but that day he saw her. It was like a splash, he doesn't know why, but then he wanted to see these movements again. It seemed to him that the feelings from his childhood were being revived. With this he could shine again. Park turns to Kwon, saying that all this is thanks to her, because she made him realize that there is another world in which he can fly. Therefore, he has hope. He closes his eyes in a smile and asks her to take care of him, calling him a teacher. Kwon is silent for a long time, immersed in thoughts about how amazing he is, and without noticing it, she says it out loud. Having heard nothing, Park asks again, but Kwon asks not to pay attention. Kwon hopes they can have fun together, and wishes them health and patience. Park confuses Kwon, thinking it strange that a teacher would call a student Appa, so Kwon asks if he should call him Dong Hee Appa. Park replies that suits him, and she can just call him Dong Hee Appa, which makes Kwon blush. Confused, Kwon asks again. Park replies that many people call him that, and it's even more convenient for him. Stuttering, Kwon tries to call him Dong Hee Appa, but gives up, surprising Park with his embarrassment. Kwon explains that she is the only daughter in the family, and has always wanted an older brother. A group of 3 girls comes into a cafe and is about to have some tteokbokki before school. A dark-haired girl asks a girl named Soya what she will be doing. Soya is forced to run to an agency for an idol internship. The girl turns around and opens her mouth in surprise, clearly recognizing Puck at the table. She tells her friends that she is leaving. Puck gets home, sits on the bed and removes the prosthesis from his leg, complaining about its discomfort and his fatigue. Looking dreamily at the ceiling, he is glad that he has motivation again. Park shouts loudly about the upcoming training. Hyun comes into the room and demands that he not make noise and do his homework. Kwon also gets home, takes off his school uniform and changes into his home clothes. Kwon is called from behind the door to hurry up, to which she replies that she will be there soon. Kwon herself looks in the mirror, thinking about Park and whether there are still passionate people like him. Standing in front of the mirror, she finally comes out of her thoughts and tells herself that she also needs to try. Morning came, school children surrounded the school corridors, staring at an incredibly beautiful girl, a first-year student, passing by. She walks down the corridor amid heated discussions of her person by everyone around her. Meanwhile, Puck sits calmly at his desk in the office, waiting for classes to start. He is thinking about how to make his exit more natural after school. In class they meet a first-year student who has entered the office. A blonde girl comes up to Puck's desk. This is yesterday's girl from the cafe, Soya. Discouraged, Park looks up, clearly not recognizing Soya, and doesn't even notice the hand already flying towards his face. A hard slap sends Puck flying, in which he simultaneously drops chairs and desks standing in the way, and schoolchildren gather around him. Enraged, Puck stands up, rubs his cheek and turns to her, asking what the hell she's doing. The girl clearly recognized him. She glares at him full of anger, and calling him a bastard says that she will never forgive him. The crowd around them has parted and they are whispering, discussing the rumors about Puck. Puck repeats her words in bewilderment. She can't believe that he left. He doesn't understand what he's talking about. The girl is outraged by Puck's lack of understanding. She shouts that he has started b-boying again. In response to the noise, Soya's friends from the cafe from yesterday approach the crowd, suggesting that a fight is brewing. One of them tells her friend about a girl who beat up guys from their class. Last year she danced 17-1, and now she's come and wants revenge. The girl looming over Puck tells him to come to the backyard during the next break. If Park runs away, Soya threatens to kill him. She calls Park Dongyapa and hurriedly leaves the classroom. On the way out, she meets her friends, who ask if this is really true. Then the 3 of them leave. Puck doesn't want to get involved with his past again, but it continues to haunt him. But he still doesn't understand who this girl is. Later, at recess, they meet, and the amazed Park recognizes Soya as the girl who was the youngest on their team. Soya is even more outraged that he didn't notice her around all this time. She asks how he could forget when she is in group photos. Puck responds with indignation that she is never normally seen in the photos. Even so, he didn't recognize Soya. She says that now, as an idol, she has to work hard to become a professional. In response to what was said, Park asks in surprise if Soya left the team. Rubbing his neck, Soya shocks Park with the news that the team has disbanded. Park asks again, but she continues that the team was created by Hyun. In a sense, it was expedient. According to Soya's story, all the participants were Hyun's friends and gathered to see him and Park. Even after Park injured his leg in an accident, they believed in him until the end and tried to follow him. Soya gradually becomes angry again that Park suddenly disappeared, as if he abandoned them all and ran away. Puck listens silently, which is why she holds a grudge against him and thinks only about it when she looks at him. Someday she will want to hear an explanation. Giving it up, she turns around and leaves, leaving Puck alone. Later, Park joins the surprised Kwon on the set. She asks if something happened to him. Park denies it as if nothing happened, and Kwon suggests they practice hypertrophy. She and Kwon begin to train hard. Pak, after listening to her explanations, climbs onto the horizontal bar. Tired of training, Puck sits down and takes a break. The training was hard but fun. Suddenly, Soya appears from behind, frightening Pak. Noting that he looks tired, but happy, she was sitting here initially. Kwon approaches, surprised by the new addition to the company. Soya immediately greets and introduces himself. Soya adds that she is still surprised that Park is studying the horizontal bar exercises. Workout is about bodyweight exercises. The whole body can be harmoniously trained. This is one of the oldest exercise methods. According to her, these days the movement of the naked body is the center of attention in world competitions. Soya talks in detail about what evaluation criteria and types of competitions exist. Park and Kwon are completely incomprehensible. Soya is amazed that they have absolutely no idea what they are talking about and takes out her phone to show them. The athletes alternate in the footage. The first demonstrates a 360-degree swing, turning her body at the highest point and grabbing the horizontal bar. Next, a dead planche is demonstrated, in which the athlete holds the body parallel to the ground. Next on the screen is a body turn, also known as a swing, in which the athlete unwinds on the horizontal bar. Soya looks pleased. She wants to go to the tournament where adepts from all over the world compete. She asks Kwon if she knew about something like this. These are the actions that people who do this exercise strive for. Soya snarkily notes that she heard Kwon was planning to start a club, and even if not, she wanted to do such exercises. Kwon is somewhat confused. She looks at Park and Soya, and after a while she says that she can do that too. With these words, she puts Park and Soya into a stupor. They turn around and look at her in surprise. Kwon goes to the projectile, climbs on it, and begins the demonstration. Having risen with force, Kwon spins his body around its axis and grabs the horizontal bar. This is a 360-degree swing. Following this, Kwon climbs onto the bars and performs a perfect dead planche. Returning to the horizontal bar, Kwon spins on it, turning his body in a swing. Kwon spins faster on the horizontal bar, at one point launching into the air under the gaze of the amazed Pak. Turning upside down over the horizontal bar, Kwon quickly spins in the air. To complete the trick, Kwon grabs the projectile and calmly steps off it, rubbing his palms. Park admires Kwon's skill. He wouldn't be proud if he only learned how to power lift. Park is determined. He clenches his fist tightly and intends to work to repeat Kwon's success. Turning to Soya, Park asks her thoughts about Kwon's demonstration. From Soya's bulging eyes and her wide-open mouth, you can tell that she is in shock from what she saw. They don't have many activists, especially girls, but she does moves that are difficult even for men. Soya has a lot of questions and finds out that Kwon accidentally started when she was in second grade and practices every day. From her story it is clear that Kwon had never been on a team, and actually learned about the tournaments for the first time. Soya gets Park and Kwon's attention by asking if they have time on the weekend. Full of determination, she points her finger at them and declares that she will show them the world of workout. At the agreed time, the company of Kwon, Park and Soya gathers at the site where many athletes are now training. Athletes demonstrate different workout techniques. Soya leads the group around the site. Puck walks and looks at someone else's workout so much that he involuntarily leans forward while walking. Here in Gyeongbong Park all the workout groups gather, as Soya talks about. Park and Kwon look around. Genuine delight is visible on their faces. This is the first Gilbong Park in Korea, located in northern Gangdong-gu of Seoul. This is where many workout sports clubs hold meetings or competitions. Local athletes demonstrate amazing skill and level of training. Soya notes how many beautiful bodies there are on this site. Park and Kwon themselves are amazed at how many people there are here. Park's gaze catches on a guy practicing a power-up on the horizontal bar. There are also those who can do it like Kwon. Soya says that such exercises are called dynamic. In workouts are divided into dynamic and static exercises. It is mainly used to combine these two types into freestyle. Gradually, the workout exercises turned into a sport. Kwon understands that that's why she watched the foreigners practice. She didn't know that they had so many people doing this. While Kwon was staring at the horizontal bar, one of the trainees approached her and asked if it was her first time here. The stranger notes that the iron bars are too harsh for such a cutie and offers to give her a lift. Kwon refuses, and the guy, amazed by her stubbornness, asks to take a look. Standing under the horizontal bar, Kwon thinks for a moment, but still agrees. Puck continues to look around and is amazed at how good they all are at this. Amid general applause, Puck turns to the guy who is doing push-ups on one arm. The crowd says that he is famous on the internet. His name is Kim Myung-jun. Park is amazed at how Kim does push-ups on one hand, but the guy standing next to him suggests watching what happens next. Kim takes a deep breath and, as she exhales, pushes off the ground with force. His legs rise with the push and sharply push off from the ground. Kim's body, supported by one hand, rotates and his legs rise into the air. Puck, watching the performance, is speechless with surprise. Kim ends the move impressively by placing one arm behind her back and straightening her legs to the sky. The crowd rejoices and the tired Kim slowly rises to his feet amid thunderous applause. He is brought out of his thoughts by Puck, who runs up and asks him to teach him to do the same. Puck shouts to the entire court that this is impressive, and he wants to learn the same. Kim stuns him with her answer, a complete unconditional refusal. Following the departing Kim, Park says that he just wants to learn, but Kim has more important things to do than teaching Park. Puck puffs up with indignation. One of the participants comes up to him and explains that there is no point in interfering during training. Their dialogue is interrupted by Kim, asking about Park's reasons for wanting to learn the same way. Fired up with enthusiasm, Puck responds just to be cool. What Park said makes Kim very angry. He has nothing to teach a guy with such a mentality. Puck doesn't understand what's going on, but the guy who was talking to him grabs his forehead, realizing what's happening. Workout is a no-fault sport, so it builds a strong body to have a strong mind. He can't teach Puck this simply because it's cool. Having said all this, he turns around and leaves. A guy nearby asks Park to understand that Kim is also a human being and is already tired of such requests. Grunting, Park asks the departing Kim if he has fun when he trains. The guy from the platform who heard this opens his mouth wide in surprise. Hearing this, Kim turns around and glares at Puck from under her bangs. Kim is clearly annoyed by what was said and that Park did not understand what he said. Puck screams all over the court. Be it sports or competitions, training without fun is not fun at all. He realizes that Kim's body wouldn't be as strong without willpower, and talks about it. Through gritted teeth, Park says as he gets closer to Kim that those who don't enjoy training outweigh those who just try harder. Kim is furious. He looks up at Puck and challenges him to a duel. Enraged, Park grins broadly, saying that he has never lost to someone like Kim. Park and Kim freeze opposite each other, silently casting angry glances. While searching for Park, Soya goes out to the crowd gathered on the site not far from Park and Kim. She asks what is happening there. In the crowd, she finds the same guy named Han-sung and asks him what happened. Soya exclaims in surprise about what was said. Now there will be a push-up battle. Push-up battle is a competitive method of varying several push-up movements each round. The tense Kim means that if he wins, Park will teach him anything, and if he loses, he will leave the park forever. Looking at Kim defiantly, Park assures that this will not happen, because he is going to win. Soya, who heard this, is sincerely perplexed where Park gets this confidence. Soya understands very well that for Kim all of this is not just 2 push-ups. Currently one of the top South Korean workout athletes, he tells Park to prepare for the worst. However, Park was at one time the best b-boy on the team. In response he throws back the words of King Sejong to Kim. It's so boring here that you want to sleep. A turquoise car rushes along a deserted street, rounding turns. 2 people get out of the car. A tattooed girl indicates to the director that they are there. The man who came out after her looks pleased and hums a melody. When asked by the director to look around and have a snack, Sangi caustically notes that he just wants to drink. As if to himself, he suggests seeing if the best of the best Prince of Statics can drink well. Meanwhile, on the court, Kim and Park are preparing for the competition. Kim takes off his t-shirt, showing off his muscles. Seeing Kim shirtless, the crowd cheers and wildly discusses his coolness and strength. Park doesn't stand aside either, thinking that Kim's body is really good, and the people and atmosphere look tense. Park exclaims how much he enjoys what is happening, and follows Kim by taking off his t-shirt, turning everyone's eyes towards him. The crowd's reaction to Park is radically different. They look at him with faces of complete incomprehension. Han-sung, who is watching what is happening with Soya, is confused and only says that everything is not so bad. Kim can't wait to start, which is what he says. The participants indicate their readiness for the competition. Han-sung explains the rules. Push-up battle is a way to increase the difficulty of push-ups with each round. They need to be completed 30 times per round. Park and Kim stand upright. Han-sung stands opposite to give the go-ahead for the first round. With Han-sung's go-ahead to start, the participants immediately break down and start doing push-ups. Park and Kim begin with equal zeal and tenacity, both determined exclusively to win. While doing the exercise, Park begins to feel his body gradually getting tired. However, Park grins an embittered smile. He sees in this what makes him feel alive. They both succeed in the 30 push-up round, but by now Park is starting to feel terribly short of breath. Han-sung outlines the rules for the second round, in which they will compete in taper push-ups. Despite his fatigue, Park stands up, folds his hands closer to his chest, clenches his teeth, and begins. The participants are on approximately equal terms, but while Park is gritting his teeth, Kim looks absolutely calm. Songyi and the director come to the site where Park and Kim are competing right now. They look around. Songyi notes that the level is no worse than expected, thanks to SNSTube. Many actions can now be easily seen and practiced. Even if it was not at the level of Europe and America, little by little successful stars began to emerge. However, the director adds that being a world star is not enough. The end of the second round is announced. They are interested. Songyi understands that this is probably a battle. The director clearly wants to see this, and they come closer to the general crowd. You can see Park and Kim on the set. Park is shaking violently all over his body, and even though Kim also looks tired, he does not give in. The crowd is already concluding that the newcomer is about to die, while another notes that the push-up battle is much more difficult than it seems. Han-sung moves closer to the exhausted Park and asks if he can continue. Meanwhile, Soya silently watches from the side, clearly concerned about Park's condition. Of course, Park refuses to give up. Even being exhausted, he proposes to start the third round. His words calm Soya down. She smiles, and the excited crowd is already gossiping about Park's coolness. Kim is silent, as if immersed in his deep thoughts about what is happening. Han-sung announces a new exercise, push-ups in the form of an archer shooting a bow, evenly using the whole body. In the new exercise, Park spreads his body on the archer's outstretched arm and the trembling in him intensifies. As he descends, it becomes more and more difficult for him to get up. His back shakes. It is more difficult than it seemed. Looking at Kim performing the exercise next to him, one can note that it is not easy for him either. Despite the difference in physique, Park and Kim seem to be on equal terms in the battle. After 5 minutes, Han-sung announces the end of the third round. Park is exhausted, but still does not give up. Even Kim looks tired. The fourth round is announced. The director closely watches the competition while the crowd discusses the capabilities of the opponents. Kim turns to Park, tells him not to lose strength, to abstain, surprised that he doesn't know that this is not enough to win. Kim notes that there is another guy who is studying. They can watch videos together. Suddenly Park raises his head and it seems to dawn on him that this was indeed his original bet, and with this he amazes Kim. Kim is perplexed that Park started this battle because of this, and he decides to ignore what Kwon told him. Park was having fun playing sports, that's why he forgot. That's what he's talking about. His words attract the attention of the stunned director, who watches even more intently than before. When he trains, he always just wants to know how far he can go. If he can train like Kim, he will have a lot of fun. From what was said, Kim's eyes bulge out. He is in a state of shock. Meanwhile, Han-sung signals the start of the fourth round and a new exercise, one-arm push-ups. By the beginning of the round, Kim was practically boiling with anger. So angry were he from Park's words about the fun of training. Park's words seemed funny and extravagant to him, and with new strength and perseverance he begins the exercise. Watching Kim's determination, the crowd is stupefied by the strength with which he continues the competition. Determined to prove Park wrong and unwilling to forgive him for it, Kim grits her teeth and continues. He will definitely win this battle. This thought does not leave his head, however. At one moment he freezes. Turning his head, Kim notices that his opponent is lying on the ground unconscious. Han-sung freezes, examining Park's body, and in his head he has the same surprise that has matured in the rest of the crowd. The crowd freezes, not understanding what is happening. Soya screams Park's name and runs towards him. Soya falls to her knees in front of Park, trying to figure out if he's okay. Leaning closer to him, Soya hears distinct, quiet snoring. Everything is exactly as the crowd further concludes. Park just lies and sleeps during the round. Han-sung announces the winner. The winner is obviously Kim. The director addresses Songi, calling her cluster. Songi comes closer, indicating that he is listening. Taking off his glasses, the director shows a wide smile, raises his eyebrow and notes that Park is a funny guy and he wants him. Meanwhile, the crowd cheers and all attention turns to the other side. An uncomprehending Han-sung heads towards the crowd on the other side of the court, asking what is going on. Right at this moment, all eyes are on Kwon, who is spinning on the horizontal bar, demonstrating her skills. Holding the horizontal bar tightly, Kwon rises vertically above it. From the height of his position, Kwon sharply stretches his legs down and gives his body rotational inertia. Having accelerated in rotation to incredible speed, she heads upward along the horizontal bar, and at the very last moment, as she lifts her legs, she spins around herself, flying into the air. Having flown up, Kwon makes many sharp turns around its axis, and to top off the trick, she perfectly grips the horizontal bar, supporting her body weight. As the crowd cheers, Han-sung recognizes her movements as a 540-degree swing with high technique, and is amazed at her skill. Sitting next to the barely waking Park, Soya yells at Kwon to be careful. Kwon herself, without stopping her performance, spins up again, preparing to demonstrate a new trick. She picks up speed, her tail of hair fluttering in the oncoming air. Having gained sufficient speed, Kwon sharply pushes off at the very peak of his rise and soars several meters into the air. The silently stunned crowd watches in fascination as her trick is performed. Soya noisily admires the height of her jump, unable to comprehend what is happening. The director, watching from the side, is sincerely interested in who is currently performing on the horizontal bar. The sight he saw makes Puck instantly wake up and direct his gaze to her. Performing a series of somersaults and tucks, Kwon turns over multiple times in the air in all directions. From the peak of the height, she descends in free fall, stretches her hand forward, trying to catch the horizontal bar with it. And at this moment the trick is completed with a perfect power grip that holds Kwon's own weight on the horizontal bar. However, at the last moment, having extinguished the inertia, she weakens her grip and lets go of the horizontal bar. Kwon rushes to the ground, but manages to group himself and, only groaning, carefully lands on his bent legs. Kwon rubs his sore hands, asking himself if it was too slow. She is brought out of these thoughts by the noise of a cheering crowd that is already running towards her. The crowd asks her a lot of questions, admires her technique. They have never seen such a cool freestyle. Soya, standing to the side, confusedly notes to herself that this was expected. This reaction is surprising. Kim stands far away, silently watching what is happening. Finally fully awakened, Park quietly joins in the general admiration. Kwon seems amazing to him. His face changes and now there is melancholy in it. Puck quietly says that he envies them. His gaze does not leave Kwon, who is still fending off questions from the admiring audience. After a while, daylight rises over the park, silence, and people disperse from it. Evening is approaching. A group of Park, Soya and Kwon walks down the street, discussing the past day. Memories spark new determination in Puck, and next time he definitely intends not to lose. Park turns to Kwon. Today she was the best, these are his words. It was a head-scratching experience for Kwon, who was excited to perform in front of a large audience. In front of more people, it was different for her than during normal training. Puck accepts her words with a smile. He understands exactly this feeling, and what she is talking about. With renewed determination, he offers to come back later and crush that worm. Kwon suggests that he should train well for this. Soya, walking ahead, listens, purses her lips, dissatisfied with the fact that she took her at all. As if indifferently, Soya notes that they gather there once a month and recommends that they go after finding out the time. Park is outraged by her words. She should go with them. Soya does not understand why. Because she is not a member of the club. In response to this, Puck offers to join the club together. Without her they would not have learned anything and were just playing sports. They should be together. Kwon also joins his words. She asks Soya to join and only manages to start talking about her capabilities. It turned out that the answer is obvious. Pursing her lips, Soya asks again if they are sure they want to invite her. Park and Kwon rejoice at the addition to the club. Kwon thanks Soya for this. Soya silently watches Puck's enthusiasm and thinks about something of his own. Memories take her back 6 years, when children gathered on the playground and discussed creating a b-boy team. They go through options for what makes them look strong, but it all comes down to plagiarism. As young Soya on the swing watches, young Pak turns to her and asks the guys about her. She is in the 4th grade at their school. Her family is very rich. A big car comes to school for her, but at home she is like a princess, so her classmates bully her. Puck approaches the swing and hovers over the drooping Soya, addressing her. He only manages to attract her attention, and immediately faces misunderstanding by inviting her to the b-boy team. They are b-boys, but Soya does not understand at all what this means. Park adds that these are dances, very cool. Soya answered in confusion that she was not interested, and it didn't sound cool. Puck interrupts and says not to lie, because all this time she was looking at them and wanted to join. He again calls her with him. So Pak suggested having fun together, which amazed her. She sat and looked at him with undisguised surprise. Soya couldn't believe it, and asked hopefully if she could really have fun with them. In her memories, he just suddenly disappeared. He thinks about this, looking at his back. Soya stands behind him and watches with the understanding that he has not changed at all. Deep evening falls on the city. The first stars are visible in the sky. Park and Kwon say goodbye to Soya and then walk off to the opposite side of the street together. For some time, Kwon and Park walk along the same path. The street is illuminated almost exclusively by stars. By the time they say goodbye, Kwon decides to go a different route. They had fun today. Their next meeting is on Monday. On the way home, Puck digests everything that happened. There were a lot of amazing people in the park. Remembering Kim, he tries to understand why he was angry at his words about fun and sports. Because doing without fun is pointless. It's as if Puck is inflamed for the first time. Whether it's Kim or salted pollock caviar, he can't lose to him, and won't allow him to say stupid things again. Puck is knocked out of his thoughts by the stranger's voice, who is amazed at the scope of Puck's dream. He turns sharply at the stranger who brought him out of his thoughts, and asks the one who he is. The director appears in front of Park on a dark street, starting a monologue about how the boy cannot cope with the strongest opponent in Korea. Puck is tense, the veins on his face are bulging. He repeats his question and asks if the director was listening. The same one, ignoring the question asked, continues that his goal is not impossible, hinting that with his support everything can work out. Puck responds with incomprehension, but at the same time invites the stranger to quietly leave. The director is surprised by this and reaches for the business card holder. The business card of the CEO of Famous is stretched from the man's hand to Puck Maker, a famous clothing brand. The man explains that he is now investing not only in fashion, but also in workout, looking for good athletes, and Puck accidentally caught his eye. However, he also notes that apparently Puck's legs don't look very good and asks how this happened. Pak became nervous and asked whether the director really needed to know about this. The director, in turn, is just curious. If Puck doesn't like it, he won't insist. After some thought, Puck finally makes up his mind and lowers himself to roll up his trouser leg. His prosthesis appears before the director's eyes. Puck talks about how his leg was cut off due to an accident. For some time, the director freezes in a stupor, having no idea what to say at all. At one moment, his face changes dramatically, his pupils narrow, and his mouth opens in surprise that Puck is missing one leg. All this time he thought that Puck was just uncomfortable with his leg, but he didn't have it at all. He refuses to believe that Puck did push-ups on one leg. It probably hurt with one leg. Looking at the embarrassed Puck at this moment, the director concludes that he may be much more interesting than he could even think. Upon arriving home, Kwon turns to Ji-yoon, indicating his return. Ji looks unhappy. She asks why Kwon is so late, and if she knows that she is late for dinner, Kwon is surprised by her presence. The answer to Kwon's question is simply to clarify the obvious, that she arrived late. For a moment, Kwon freezes in surprise. She is extremely amazed to see her mother at home. Mom immediately inquires about what Kwon was up to late, and whether she was relaxing too much on the weekend. In response, Kwon deftly evades the topic, counter-asking whether Mom has had dinner, since it's time for her to go. Kwon replies that there is a lot of time in the past and Mom needs to eat. She wearily replies that she doesn't have time. Mom turns around and with a stern look warns Kwon not to be lazy without her and get ready for school. After a couple of moments of silence, Kwon answers in the affirmative and asks not to worry, but Ji turns away, pursing his lips in displeasure. Meanwhile, on the street, Puck is talking with the director about the battle in the park. To put it bluntly, he likes Puck. The ability to perform exercises with one leg is very good for someone just starting out, he says. Park seems to really enjoy what he does, as the director says. There are good guys everywhere. Businessmen take them. The capital is not bad, but the frequency of training can be changed. He wants to create a culture where he can enjoy sports as before. A director looking for new friends. A hand reaches out to Puck for a greeting handshake. It's the director's hand. Looking into his eyes, the man smiles and invites him to join them. Struck by such a proposal, Puck is dumbfounded with surprise. And what Pak answered remained in that day. Now at recess on a new day, answering Soya's question, he chews and talks about his refusal. Completely confused, Soya widened her eyes, hesitantly asking again about what Pak had said. He himself said that this is Famous Maker, the most famous branded clothing store, and its director and creator is named Joseph. Soya doesn't understand how he could just refuse, but for Pak this offer was a little unexpected. Park has always been a strange guy to make decisions. Soya, who knows this, only sighs tiredly, looking intently at the carefree him. Meanwhile, Puck himself, slowly chewing his lunch, remembers the previous evening and his conversation with Joseph. Then the completely dumbfounded Joseph fell into hysterics, shouting almost in tears that they needed to do this. Joseph doesn't understand whether Pak really isn't waiting for the creation of a new culture on Korean soil, and Pak really isn't waiting. Bowing his head, Puck explains that it's not that he can't do it, he just doesn't know how. Puck's face expressed a particularly aggressive determination. He loudly claims that he already has a teacher. With this, Puck puts Joseph into outright confusion. He does not know what to answer and how to understand what was said. Puck stands in a proud pose and repeats that he already has a teacher and going to another would be a betrayal. Puck, with all his self-confidence, answers Joseph's question that his first-year teacher is from his own school. An attempt to explain that Joseph is not talking about this at all was unsuccessful. Puck is still adamant. Once a teacher, always a teacher. Joseph grabs his forehead, not understanding what is wrong with Puck. He suspects a mania for martial arts novels. However, Puck turns to Joseph again, because he has another reason. Puck says that he wants to become the best of the best in this on his own. With all his will and determination, he declares that he will definitely put his whole soul into this matter. Joseph looks at Puck silently for a while, digesting what he said, and then just asks if that's all. The conversation between Soya and Park is interrupted by Kwon bursting in with a joyful exclamation. She brought and shows the club application. The required number of participants has been collected. Now they need to fill it out, and they will be assigned a person in charge. The club was created faster than Park could have thought. Soya asks if Kwon has thought about what she will do. Kwon doesn't even come close to understanding what he's talking about, and still doesn't know what to do. Soya, after some thought, suggests that Park and Kwon consider participating in the competition. Puck seems to have an epiphany and agrees that this will also be a club activity. Gyeobong Park sometimes hosts competitions, with up to 30 people there, says Soya, who did push-ups and hand-holds. Large competitions are held abroad, in which hundreds of people participate, but in Korea there is still no such scale. A question is heard from the window, which distracts the whole company from the conversation. What is she talking about? Puck suddenly jumps up and goes to the window, opening it wide. Leaning further out the window and raising his head, Puck sees a helicopter right now circling over the school building. Naturally, such an event does not go unnoticed and all the schoolchildren run out to take a closer look. Hearing screams that the helicopter has stopped at the site, Park calls out to Kwon and Soya, beckoning them to come take a look as well. The helicopter is hovering in the air over the sports field, and right now a crowd of students is surrounding the area around it. Joseph, leaning out of the helicopter, holding the handrails, laughs joyfully, saying that he has not visited school for a long time. Secretary Song asks Joseph if he is satisfied with the height, to which he receives a satisfied and deeply positive answer. Watching Joseph in the helicopter, Puck can't believe he recognizes him as the CEO. A moment later, Joseph jumps out of the helicopter and, rushing his head towards the ground, freely dives down. The crowd's mouths drop open as soon as he jumps, and Kwon grabs his mouth, closing it in horror. Joseph is getting closer to the ground, diving towards the horizontal bars. He hums a song under his breath, "Winners do not die." Having approached the horizontal bar, Joseph deftly grabs it and spins around. A series of rapid rotations is followed by a jump, after which Joseph stands up and balances on the horizontal bar with his feet. Straightening up in his stance, Joseph warms up and says he smells an almost ripe aroma. The stunned audience, along with Park, Soya and Kwon, listens attentively. Joseph means the smell of the magnificent berries. Having said this, Joseph takes off his protective glasses and turns to Puck, letting him know that he is not missing out on what he likes. Each school has its own way of opening a club. In their high school, when 3 participants gather with applications, the school hires a person in charge. The person in charge must be a regular teacher and does not have the right to run the club. Joseph happily exclaims that he is glad to see them and introduces himself as their new teacher in charge. What was said plunges the trio into shock, and Kwon stands out from them, standing as if not understanding anything. Their conversation takes place in the director's spacious office, with the director himself sitting behind Joseph at the table. Standing behind the satisfied director right now is Secretary Song. The amazed Puck clarifies whether Joseph was a teacher from their school. Having received a more than obvious answer, he asks how then he became one. Joseph says that this is a secret, but Song, who is massaging director's shoulders, raises an agreement above his head, which seems to hint. As evening approaches, Joseph Lee offers to meet, introduces himself and says that he is now their responsible teacher. Without any special pleasantries, Puck just grins at him and, to Joseph's surprise, calls him a fraud. Smiling provocatively, Joseph assures that there is no lie here, he is a teacher, and he even has a certificate. Joseph turns his attention to Kwon and Soya and asks them to introduce themselves. Soya smiles brightly at Joseph and introduces himself, still in his head not believing that it is him. Joseph expresses his joy at meeting her, saying to himself that she is the aspiring idol he knows about. Kwon also introduces himself, but immediately turns to Joseph asking for a favor. Joseph recognized her as a child who showed an excellent level of workout. That's when he saw these tricks, he says under his breath. Joseph explains to Kwon that he was in the park that day. He was hiding, but he saw her really cool performance. Joseph looks back at Puck, silently guessing that she is Puck's teacher. He is convinced of it. Joseph turns to Puck and addresses him, asking what happened to him. Puck looks at him in disbelief. Joseph adds that this is a club event, and it's worth having fun together. Park stares at Joseph, ignoring everything he said under Kwon's bewildered gaze. It's already getting dark outside, so Joseph announces that it's already late and the whole company is free. After a while, Puck returns home. The whole family sits at the table and Mom brings a special dish for dinner. There is a plate of ramen on the table, which the mother happily presents to her sons. Puck doesn't understand what's special about it. Mom emphasizes that this is a special ramen, because there are 2 yolks in 1 egg. Mom asks Puck what he thinks about this ramen, and if he thinks it's special. His brother gets nervous. Puck himself doesn't hear. He is immersed in thoughts about Joseph and the reasons for his appearance at school. Without noticing it, he curses. Puck is brought out of his trance by the words of his alarmed brother that these are not the words that he should have said. Realization came quickly. The almost crying mother heard that her ramen was tasteless. She had already thought of something to be offended by. Throughout the house there are shouts at Puck to apologize to his mother, his excuses and sad acceptance that it is already late. A new day arrives. Kwon arrives earlier than the others and sits waiting in the clubhouse. She smiles, sincerely rejoices at the arrival of the first club for work. Goosebumps run through her skin. With a noisy greeting and a question about the studies of his wards, Joseph abruptly enters the room. Joseph was taken aback because he saw only Kwon. Kwan confirmed that she was probably the only one who came in advance. Joseph already manages to get upset, because on the first day the first perception is built. The confused state of Kwan and Joseph gives way to surprise. The door creaks open. Puck stands in the doorway, for some reason no less surprised by what happened than those present. After some hesitation, Puck turns to Joseph. He wants to tell him something. On the street, he asks why Joseph came here, because it's a no-brainer that it's not without reason. Why did he get a job at the club and now is trying to get used to it? This is the question that worries Puck. Continuing his reasoning, Puck concludes that Joseph wants to find out something and is not interested in being involved with the club. Joseph reminds Puck that he himself said that he himself will become the best. But he himself knows how difficult it is. Joseph cannot believe that he is serious. Remembering the recent past, Puck really said that he wanted to be better than the rest. Joseph notes that Puck's face then directly indicated that he was very angry. He asks about the reason. He heard that Puck used to dance and he had a team. To which Puck shouts that he doesn't know anything. Puck grins angrily at Joseph. He says through his teeth that everything depends on him. And Joseph doesn't need to know anything else. He just doesn't want to be involved with anyone anymore. That's what he explains to Joseph. Having expressed all this, Puck falls silent in confusion, lowers his gaze and waits for an answer. Joseph asks if Puck was the one who started all this, if he came to this school to create a club. He a little later notes that this is half true and half false. Joseph asks to wait in response to Puck's question, and begins the story that one day in America he was sitting on the playground and someone called him. Then Joseph stood in front of the iron horizontal bar and looked at it. The guy asked him to just watch how he pulled himself up. Continuing the story, Joseph actively gestures, raises his hand, saying that then he saw something that changed his whole life. That guy was then doing one-arm pull-ups, which aroused the admiration of young Joseph, but he soon disappeared. Then Joseph continued to train on the horizontal bar until sunset, but nothing worked for him, because he could only pull himself up with 2 hands. The next day his body was screaming from muscle pain. He trained all night long, then every day wherever possible. After about 4 days he practiced at school. A friend who was usually nearby wanted to be able to do the same, then another one appeared. Suddenly the horizontal bars were crowded with people. About 2 weeks passed and all the boys in his class began swinging on the horizontal bars. The number of successful children kept increasing, and after about 2 months everyone could do pull-ups. They began to complicate the training. The more difficult it was, the more fun it became, but also more difficult. Puck silently remembers his beginning and understands that it was the same for him. Joseph continues, pulling himself up with his hand on the slab protruding from the wall, which they really liked. At this moment, his arm tenses sharply. He makes an effort and makes a forceful exit, rising above this slab on one hand. Puck's eyes widen, watching in surprise as Joseph performs his move. Multiple memories from the past flash through Puck's head. He realizes that he is doing the same thing now. Joseph jumps off the wall and says that in Korea there are already many who do workout, but they didn't immediately get up from the ground. He says that he can enjoy this culture and came here in search of his friends. Joseph suggests trying to just enjoy this culture together. Puck remembers the past again. And it's true, all this is just because it was fun. Puck silently exchanges glances with Joseph. Smoothly coming out of his thoughts, he says that he likes it. Finally, Puck smiles benevolently. He turns to Joseph with a request to teach him how to do one-arm pull-ups. Joseph pauses stunned for a moment before answering. Then, closing his eyes, he bursts into laughter and replies that he will teach Puck something more complex. Breathing a sigh of relief, Puck finally accepts both Joseph and his words. On the way back, Puck adds that he is not going to be on the team, but Joseph tells him to do what he likes. In the morning, for some unknown reason, schoolchildren began to gather in a crowd near the school. As it soon turns out, Joseph is the cause of the excitement. Schoolchildren gather to take pictures with him. Having taken the first photographs, Joseph responds to the newly approached schoolchildren's requests to be photographed. Joseph is distracted from an unscheduled photo shoot by Puck approaching him and shouting at him from behind. Puck offers to deal with the fans and asks for instructions. Joseph explains that communication with fans is important for promotion. Joseph then suggests that Puck study while he is alive, which greatly irritates Puck. A week has passed, but his dream has not come true. Puck goes to the site where Kwan has just finished training. But as soon as he reaches the site, everything seems to return to normal. He looks at Kwan and wonders what it's like. Pointing to the horizontal bar, Park asks Kwan to watch him do an exercise on the horizontal bar. At this point, Soya appears behind them, greets them and offers to shoot a video. Puck appears in the camera lens, looks into it, climbs onto the horizontal bar and offers to start. For some time, Puck simply swings on the horizontal bar, staring intently at the crossbar. Then, with a sharp exhalation, Pak tenses his entire body and stretches upward. In an instant, he overcomes the crossbar with his torso, making a forceful exit, and turns over on it. Soya, filming on her phone, looks at how tense his muscles are. Climbing his torso over the line of the crossbar again, Pak hunched over a little, preparing for the next move. Having found himself above the crossbar with his whole body, Puck rotates around his axis. After successfully completing the rotation, Puck deftly grabs the bar, supporting his own weight. Exclaiming that it's time to start having fun, Puck jumps off the horizontal bar and gets to his feet cleanly. Turning to Soya over his shoulder, Park asks if he did it delicately. Soya replies that it's more than perfect. Park breathes heavily after performing the techniques and watches the video. Soya stands nearby, staring at him, holding his hands behind his back. Joseph comes up from behind Soya, asking if they think it's ideal to do a pull-up and then skip the bar. Soya gets a little scared. Joseph can't believe that Puck has been doing pull-ups for 3 weeks. Soya replies that he was studying. It's because Park has a goal. Enough time has passed, and she thought that she was the goal-oriented one. Looking at Pak in thought, Soya realizes that he has much more motivation. In response, Joseph notes that he sees a problem in this. Soya is interested in its essence. Joseph greets Puck, who caustically asks about the progress with the fan community. It becomes clear that Secretary Song has become involved with the fans. Meanwhile, somewhere out there, Song explains to the crowd that she is teaching the lesson now, not the students, and there is no point in interrupting her. Giving the crowd a stern look from behind her glasses, she says threateningly that if they disrupt her lesson, they will be punished. The crowd seems to instantly fall in love with Song. As if spellbound, the schoolchildren just echo her. Joseph asks if something can be done about Puck's static actions. Judging by what Joseph had seen so far, Puck wasn't doing anything other than dynamic, and it would be nice for him to work his entire body statically. Puck says that static is boring and does not allow for rapid growth. Joseph retorts that being persistent is important, but his goal is to become the best. There's nothing wrong with that. Besides, Kim Myung-jun, #1 in Korea, became famous for his static, explains Joseph. Any exercises are important, this is the basis. Pak listens and involuntarily remembers Kim himself, that guy from the site. Joseph wonders why Puck doesn't go and learn these basics, since he himself understands how important it is. With a satisfied Pug, Joseph looks into the phone, types in the address there and tells Puck to go there. Look for a man named Kim. This Kim is often shown on television, he is a professional in his field. Pak trudges to the address in the evening, remembering Joseph's words. Then, halfway there, another thought dawns on Puck and he stops. He imagines himself climbing to the top of a mountain, and wonders if he seems too detached from the world, his eyes lighting up. Puck continues on his way, positively saying that everything will be fine, because now he will have a teacher, it cannot be otherwise. Puck walks down the street, looking back every now and then, wondering if he is already close to the address. He passes by the first gateway, where some shady company has gathered and is smoking. He does not notice either this or the next similar group in the alley, burying his face in his phone along the way. Finally, after a while, Puck gets to the right address and rings the bell. A loud ringtone is heard, but no one answers. Puck begins to think that no one is there. Then from behind him he hears a scream. A man loudly calls him a student, and from him a wooden cart rushes towards Puck at speed. The man shouts to him to take care and run to the side. The cart quickly approaches him. Realizing what was happening, Puck bulges his eyes wide and screams. Stepping sharply to the side, Puck grabs the brick wall with one hand and the cart with the other. Puck grimaced his face from the terrible weight, but nevertheless, he successfully held the cart with his grip. Later, the man rolls the cart indoors and thanks Puck for his help. With a good-natured smile, the man hands the out-of-breath Puck a bottle of water, offering him something to drink. Peeking over his shoulder, Puck notices that the man is clutching his sore shoulder. Rubbing the sore spot, the man talks to himself about some kind of ointment, wondering where it is. Puck thinks about what would happen if his grandfather had such a house. Thinking about it, He cannot believe that this is the same master. The man reaches for the first aid kit, but cannot get it, and complains that he put it so high in the first place. He reaches out, stands on his toes, but to no avail. This is not enough to reach her. His hands begin to shake violently. But then Puck comes to the rescue, lowering the first aid kit for the man. Puck hands it over, and the man rushes to thank him for his help. The man decides that Puck must be hungry and suggests waiting a little for dinner. Puck is somewhat perplexed and feels awkward, but still agrees. Puck sits down on the porch and sulks. In his opinion, this is a failure, because this man is definitely not a master. He thinks that he was deceived. At this moment, Puck closes his eyes and is already thinking about leaving, but then the gate opens. A certain guy enters the gate, announcing his return home. Puck peers into the face of the guy who came and his eyes widen again in surprise. The man who just arrived turns out to be the same guy named Kim Myung-jung from the park. Having finally recognized each other, they open their mouths in surprise. They equally did not expect such a meeting. Deep night falls on the street. The street of the area is poorly lit, mostly only by the moon and stars. Grandfather's house, which Puck came to today, has good lighting in the yard. There is a saucepan on the stove inside, and right now Grandpa is preparing soup for dinner. Grandfather hums a song under his breath while cooking. The atmosphere is as calm as possible. The situation at the table is the opposite. Kim and Pak grin at each other. Kim does not understand what Pak forgot here. Pak suggests asking his grandfather. Kim caustically offends Pak with the assumption that he is simply offended for losing on the court. Hitting the table with his fist, Park denies that he is here for another reason. Kim suggests that, regardless of the reason, he eat and go home. While Pak is angry, thinking about how harmful this Kim is, Grandfather with a saucepan comes to the table and calls for dinner. They start dinner, slowly starting their portion, Kim picking beans out of the plate with chopsticks. Grandfather grumbles at Kim and reminds him that he asked not to take the beans out of the plate. Kim can't help it, because they are tasteless. Park is surprised by what is happening. He asks Kim about his dislike for beans. Puck's malicious smile rises to his ear. He looks at Kim and teases, calling him a child. Kim reacts sharply to what was said. The veins on his face bulge with anger. Kim begins to aggressively consume the contents of the plate along with the beans, making excuses for this. Park is being sarcastic. Kim is clearly forcing himself. Grandfather watches this with a smile, while Kim threatens to eat everything without choking, and Park offers him to eat baby food. After dinner, both Park and Kim head to the shower, Kim coming out last. The first thing he sees is Puck, who says hello and goes to bed first. This confuses Kim. He asks why Pak spends the night with them. Grandfather explains that Pak is a student of his good friend. Tomorrow they plan to go to training together. Kim once again notes how Puck infuriates him. Kim approaches her grandfather, puts her fists on his shoulders and begins to knead them. He asks how Grandpa's day went, notes that a lot of hooligans have gotten divorced, and he should be careful with Puck. Meanwhile, Puck sleeps peacefully in the next room and doesn't even hear any discussion about himself. In response, the grandfather talks about today's situation with the cart. The bully would obviously ignore this situation and not help him. Grandpa thinks Pak is a good guy and sincerely hopes that he and Kim will get along. Kim looks back at Park in disbelief, thinks for a moment, but still adds that she hates him. Morning comes. The morning sun shines brightly, rising above a wide mountain. Kim walks ahead, followed by Puck and his grandfather walking up the stairs. Puck looks barely alive. It's the first time in his life he woke up so early, and it's only 5 a.m. It seems that Puck is tired. As grandfather says, he asks not to remain silent if it is difficult for him. Puck assures that everything is fine. Finally they reach a wide sports ground, located almost at the top. This turned out to be more difficult than Park could have thought. Kim looks at him out of breath on the bench and says that they have just begun. Kim asks if Park came here to watch his grandfather train. Park looks at him in bewilderment. Kim is surprised that apparently he didn't come here for this. However, the grandfather is already putting on sports gloves and stands under the horizontal bar, offering to practice a little and go down. Cheerfully, without any difficulties, grandfather leaps onto the crossbar. Having climbed up, grandfather slowly pulls himself up with his hands and raises his head above the bar. Puck looks in surprise. He thinks that grandpa is really good. Puck wants to find out if there is some trick to pull-ups. He thinks to follow his movements and find out if he counts pull-ups. At some point, Puck's face is distorted with surprise. He realizes that the bill has already gone over 180. The 190th pull-up is difficult for grandfather, but nevertheless he continues. As it turns out, It's not that difficult for Grandpa. He calmly does another dozen pull-ups from above. Pak screams, completely not understanding how this is possible. Kim is surprised. He does not know that his grandfather is listed in the Guinness Book of Records. Grandfather's record is 602 times in 2 hours and 43 minutes. No one has broken his record in 20 years. Puck's mouth opens wide in surprise. How it is even possible to do 600 pull-ups is a mystery to him. Grandfather looks tired, not letting go of the crossbar. He exhales noisily, but continues to hang. However, contrary to expectations, he swings on the horizontal bar and offers to do it 100 more times. With this proposal, he finally shatters Puck's doubts. He understands that this is definitely real. Grandpa refreshes himself with a ladle of water and rice. Puck continues to be amazed that Grandpa trains like this every day. Puck asks how Grandpa can do so many pull-ups. The answer is surprisingly simple. You have to train every day. Grandfather says that the body understands everything. If you really want something, and by training every day you will definitely achieve results. A lot of effort in training will definitely be rewarded. These are his words. Your body doesn't lie, Grandfather notes, and looks at Puck with a good-natured smile. As if a spellbound, Puck listens to him and repeats to himself, about training and about desire. Upon returning to his grandfather's house, Puck is once again lost in his thoughts. Kim tells his grandfather that he is leaving for school. He is already packed and getting ready to go out. Kim turns to Park, who is still with them, and asks what he is doing here. Park greets Kim and asks him to teach him how to train properly. The exercises that Kim does, Park asks him to teach him. Kim doesn't take Park's words seriously and reminds him of the incident on the set. He himself said that he doesn't like people like Kim. Kim has nothing to teach Park. He looks at him menacingly and demands that he not come to his house anymore. Seeing the indignation on Park's face, Kim also tells him not to look at him like that. At this point, Park explodes and not only refuses Kim's demands, but also says that he will come every day until he teaches him. Kim repeats, but Park stands his ground. He does not agree and will come here every day. Kim is stunned by this answer. He thinks that Park really is an idiot. Time passes, the streets become almost deserted, the sun rises. Grandfather is currently once again raking scrap metal from his cart. Methodically, one by one, he moves the sheets from the cart into a neat pile nearby. Along with a sudden exclamation nearby, Grandfather turns to those who are calling him. A crowd of hooligans approaches him. One tells him not to fuss around and collect garbage quickly. In response to an apology, the hooligan continues to attack. Grandfather asks if the bully demands payment, to which he only becomes more irritated and demands to apologize properly. The bully didn't ask him to do this here, he says, and you have to pay for regret, because that's what democracy is. Having said this, the hooligan forcefully kicks the pile collected by the grandfather, and the metal sheets fly apart. He comes closer, looks menacingly and angrily says that he is annoyed by his city and its vile people. The veins on the bully's face bulge with anger. He again demands payment, and asks if his grandfather can even hear him. From behind the bully, Puck approaches and looks extremely angry. One of the approaching hooligans slowly turns around, hearing the sounds of footsteps. Turning around, he screams in surprise and fear. He sees the face of Puck approaching close to him. Who is this guy? Since when has he been here? This is the question the whole company asks after the scream. Puck asks his grandfather if he is okay. His grandfather recognizes him as Puck. The big hooligan comes closer to Puck and, realizing that Puck knows his grandfather, turns his attention to him. He comes even closer and looks at Puck threateningly, saying that he better get out of here while he talks nicely. At this moment, while the big man is saying something about how Puck will have to pay otherwise, 2 fingers fly into his eyes. The big man screams throughout the street in pain, clutching his eyes, which greatly frightens the remaining hooligans. And at one moment Puck gets closer to him, grabs his ears with his palms and sharply pulls him towards himself. Bending his leg at the knee, Puck stands up on his other leg and, forcefully pulling the big man by the head, hits him in the face with his knee. The blow sends the big man flying off with force, and blood sprays out of his nose. Puck tartly points out that this is what the democracy he loves looks like. And for him there are 2 things he can't stand. It's his legs and the way bastards like that act around older people. Pulling off the strap of his bag, the embittered Puck demands an apology in a good way. Otherwise the hooligan will not leave here alive. This angers the rest of the hooligans, who note that Puck has completely lost his fear and is too daring. For a moment, Puck freezes, as if genuinely surprised that they are not going to apologize. However, apparently, He is even pleased with this, because immediately afterwards he rushes into the fray with a devilish smile. After some time, it is gradually getting dark, evening is approaching, and there is silence at grandfather's house. Approaching him, Pak asks him to sit down more slowly and carefully helps his grandfather sit down. He turns to his grandfather with a question whether the hooligans touched him. The grandfather thanks him for his help. He was lucky to meet Puck today. There really are a lot of scoundrels in this city, Pak notes. The grandfather adds that, according to rumors, these boys recently robbed his neighbors. Grandpa asks if Park came to see Kim. Park confirms that he wants Kim to teach him how to train properly. Puck confirms that he really enjoyed their training. He asks if his grandfather remembers what he told him then. We need to train more and achieve what we want. These were the words of my grandfather. Hearing his words, Park thought that he should not hesitate in training. Grandpa notes that Kim will be late today. Grandfather notes Kim's straightforwardness. His parents divorced when he was a child and then his father died, so he lived with him. Grandfather thinks that he grew up to be a very good person, but he had a difficult childhood, which is why he is very cold. Meanwhile, somewhere near the school, Kim leaned against the wall and thoughtfully looked at the stump of an old comb. There is a terrible melancholy on his face. It is clear that Kim still cannot let go of her past. Pictures of the past also recall the death of his father, his mother's betrayal and escape, and loneliness at the age of 8. It seems that at that moment his life completely ended. He was left alone. At that moment, grandfather appeared. He came and took Kim under his wing. They began to live with their grandfather, eat together and spend time together. Grandfather began to train Kim and began his hard training. Grandfather, with all his characteristic care, managed to replace both his mother and father. Some time passed and a smile appeared on the face of the then young Kim for the first time. In the memories, a picture emerges of young Kim calling his grandfather to the playground. Coming closer, he notices a comb that the grandfather is examining. When asked, the grandfather replies that it is a memory of his grandmother. He says that this is a valuable thing left by a loved one. Kim understands that this particular comb, lying in a box with a photograph of her grandmother, is the most expensive thing that her grandfather has. At that time, warnings about thieves hung on the walls of all houses in the area. Friends came to young Kim, who was left alone at home, and invited him to play on the playground. Kim doubts that she can go. Her grandfather was at work then, and he had to look after the house, but her friends continued to convince her. Then he wondered if it was even normal for him to leave like that. He finally agrees to go away for a while with his joyful friends, while a stranger passes by the house. After a while, the house is already being examined by the police. The police girl asks Kim to calm down and tell him when he left the house. Kim is in complete shock and cannot pull himself together. Through his tears he tries to say something. There were indeed a lot of stolen things. The criminal was recently in the area and it looks like he was alone. The police are waiting for victims. Turning his head, Kim notices the same memorable box that his grandfather showed him. Shouting his name, grandfather runs into the house and grabs Kim by the shoulders. Kim apologizes, but grandfather only cares about his condition. Grandfather hugs Kim tightly, holds him close, and repeats like a mantra that everything is fine. Out of the corner of her eye, Kim peeks over her grandfather's shoulder and notices something important. This something is the stump of grandmother's broken comb, which was left lying on the floor. Then night fell, the police had long left, and grandfather and Kim were left alone with what had happened. Kim lies in her bed and looks, as if spellbound, at the remaining stump of a comb. He is restless, pictures of the past day flash through his head. Kim cannot sleep. He gets out of bed and decides to go to his grandfather, goes to the door and leaves the room. Kim finds herself in the hallway and notices that the door to her grandfather's room is slightly open and the light is on. Kim comes closer to the door and carefully looks into it, trying to understand what her grandfather is doing there. A picture appears before him of his grandfather bending over a photograph of his grandmother. Holding her in his hands, grandfather cries quietly, strangledly. His breathing is ragged and heavy. Heartbroken, he shakes his whole body violently and looks at the photograph as if hypnotized. What he saw plunges young Kim into shock. He cannot comprehend what happened. Realizing what he saw, Kim tightly squeezes the remains of the comb in his fist. He decided that his grandfather was crying because of him. It was unbearably painful. In the present, Kim finally returned home and immediately explained that classes were slightly delayed. Kim inquires about Grandpa's day, adding that he will take his bag and give him a massage. Grandpa says that Pak came to see him. Kim gets angry and asks not to pay attention to ghouls like Pak. In response, Grandfather asks not to talk like that and tells about what happened. Kim opens his mouth in surprise at what was said. To be sure, he asks again. While Kim is thinking about what was said at home, Park has already gone up to the site and continues training, despite the night that he is standing in the yard. Twisting his face into an aggressive grimace, Puck breathes heavily, continuing his training with effort. Throughout the area around, his swearing and curses echo, with which he splashes out his emotions. Somewhere far away, the beaten hooligans are listening to reproach for the fact that the three of them were killed by the only Puck. A huge bully, standing with his back to them, explains that they were not going to start fights, but to get money. In response to the bully's aggressive questioning, the bullies lower their heads in fear. The bully is seriously angry. Because he has to do everything himself, he rubs his fists in anticipation of the near future. Another morning, barely able to stand on his feet from fatigue, Puck leisurely trudges to his grandfather's house. Remembering his words to Kim, Park now doubts whether Kim will teach him. Continuing to walk, immersed in doubts about his idea, Puck stumbles upon a man clearly waiting for him. This man turns out to be Kim, who is leaning against the wall. Park asks in surprise if Kim has decided to train him. For some time, Kim is thoughtfully silent, but nevertheless gives his simple and unexpected consent. Kim adds that this will be just one exercise, nothing more. In response to Pak's question, he repeats only one exercise. He will teach Pak to train. With these words he calls him to follow him. Pak is stunned. For a couple of moments he freezes in a stupor, unable to wake up and believe Kim's words. However, soon enough a smile of joy and awareness of what is happening appears on his face. Kim is seriously going to teach him, which Puck exclaims along the way to the whole street. Meanwhile, the first classes at school are slowly coming to an end. In the first-year class, Soya's friends invite her to go to karaoke or to a club with them. Making sarcastic faces, her friends egg Soya on, noting that she has changed and asking if she already has other plans. At the end of her studies, Soya leaves school. She is thinking about Pak, who has disappeared to no one knows where and is not in touch. Walking a little further, she looks at the site and notices the figure of a man training there. This person turns out to be Kwan, who has now finished warming up and is putting her hair in a ponytail. Soya says hello and Kwan says hello back. She's clearly in a good mood. Soya asks if Kwan trains every day, and after confirmation, wonders if she has any more plans. Kwan, according to her, also has extracurricular activities that she recently signed up for. Soya, eyes wide open, looks at her in silent surprise. However, their conversation is interrupted at this point. Soya is about to leave, saying about the appointment with her. Then Joseph jumps out of Soya practically out of nowhere, immediately asking him a question about how today's classes went. Joseph asks if the girls have some time. Now he wants to show them something. Soya replies that she is in a hurry. Joseph retorts that it will only take 5 minutes. Kwan is lost in thoughts about what Park is doing now. Meanwhile, at a separate site, Kim asks Pak what he decided. Pak doesn't know, he just saw Kim and was fired up with desire. Finally, he decides that he wants to learn plancha from Kim, but is faced with misunderstanding. Planche is a bare body type movement that requires a lot of muscle mass, strength, endurance, and is difficult for beginners. Kim explains that this is too difficult for Pak, but the heated Pak shouts out that he is not a weakling. Determined, Puck declares that this is exactly what he wants to learn. He is ready. Kim's memories recall the events that happened in the park during their competition. After thinking a little, Kim still decides that she will teach him, because he already said so. Kneeling down, Kim bends her wrists back and presses them into the ground, explaining that a good stretch is needed first. Next, they knead the large joints together, rotating their arms in the shoulder joint. Then they stretch their legs, stepping from one to the other and stretching alternately. After 30 minutes they finished and Kim offers to start. Park is apparently already quite tired. The priority is the shoulder and shoulder bones. He must learn to keep his back straight, slowly bend over, find the center of the body and stop. Kim takes off her t-shirt, and is about to demonstrate the exercise with an example. He stretches out his arms and explains that you need to stretch your arms in front of you and lower your shoulders. Then he assumes a prone position. In this state, the body should be lowered and supported with the legs. After all this, you need to lean forward, he explains from a standing position to Pak. At the same time, barely leaning forward, Kim raises his legs and stands in planche, explaining his movements to Pak. Park watches with open interest as Kim performs the exercise. It's cool, which is what he says. Having indicated that this is all the technique, Kim finishes and gets to his feet. Puck immediately falls to the ground, saying that he wants to try. Kim warns that it will be difficult to practice since Park has just started training. Only after trying, Puck feels that it is much harder than he expected. His whole body is pierced through with a burning, terrible pain. It seems that it is about to explode. The result is obvious. He can't stand it and falls to the ground. However, Kim praises him for a good attempt. Trying with difficulty to catch his breath, Puck hits the ground with his fist and says with some inexplicable joy that this is really very hard. Kim doesn't understand why he needed to make sure of this, because this is literally what he immediately said. Slowly Kim gets dressed and is about to leave, moving away from the sight. Turning around, he notices over his shoulder that Puck remains in his place and clearly plans to continue training. His face is full of determination. It seems that he does not doubt his success for a single second. Kim watches him for some time, trying to understand what will happen next. It's deep evening, darkness falls on the street, and the night lights come on in the courtyard of my grandfather's house. Grandfather calls Kim, whom he meets, to eat, and also wants to add something. Grandpa also asks Kim to invite Park to have dinner with them. Kim goes outside and follows to the same area where he left Puck earlier in the day. Upon arrival at the site, Kim sees that Park is still there. For some reason he thought that he had long gone home. Kim thinks he's stupid because planche is not a move that beginners can do. This does not change the fact that Park has been training hard all this time, and large calluses are visible on his hands. In a prone position, he smoothly leans his whole body forward. His arms stand somewhat diagonally relative to his body. He is trembling violently. It is clear that his entire body is tensed down to the smallest muscle. His teeth are clenched in tension. Silently watching this, Kim opens her mouth and cannot hide her curiosity. At one point, Puck raises his head, closes his eyes tightly, and puts all his strength into one effort. His socks slowly, barely noticeably, but confidently lift off the ground. Puck's body takes a horizontal position, and he successfully holds the planche in his hands. What he sees puts Kim in shock. He opens his eyes wide, unable to believe them. However, Puck doesn't hold his planche for long. After just a couple of moments in the stand, he falls on his elbow and ends there. Having barely regained his breath, he still sincerely rejoices at his success, even if it took longer than he thought. Kim is still silent. The planche in motion requires calculation. This is a complex movement of the body. It takes months, if not years, to master. However, Park repeated this. Having seen it only once, Kim considers it impossible. Memories take Kim back to the past again. His mother abandoned him. His father also left him. He remembers that he had no desire to live alone, remembers his grandfather's calloused hand. Grandfather was always with him, and then he extended that very helping hand to him. Grandfather was always there, even when they were robbed because of him. Grandfather cried for him over a photo of Kim's late grandmother. Then, after what he saw, Kim decided that he would succeed in everything. He would study a lot. He will train a lot because he must be a useful person. And one day Hansung approached him, asking him to show him some cool movement. Hansung shows one of the bar exercises on his phone, noting that street training has made many people rich. This caught Kim's attention, and he asked if they were making money from these workouts. After this, Kim began showing street workouts and became a popular person on social networks. And now he doesn't want to lose again, and looks at Puck, who is rejoicing in his success, with bewilderment. Kim responds to Puck's joy with a question, even if only for a second, but he continues to train. This amazes Kim. He assures Puck that nothing will come of it anyway, which terribly stuns him. Hovering over Puck, Kim caustically notes that Puck is arrogant, and if he can do it, any animal can do it. Puck was a little angry, because he really succeeded, but he immediately returned to thinking about how to pump up his lower body. However, Kim thinks to himself that no matter what, in such a short period of time he and the newcomer's body almost got a stand. At the same time, he again gets stuck in his thoughts, trying to understand what the catch is. Already at home, the three of them sit down to dinner with Grandpa. Grandpa tells the guys to eat more. To Kim's surprise, this time again the grandfather invites Puck to stay with them, since it is already late. Puck refuses the offer. The last time he didn't come home, there was chaos there, and he better go home. Grandfather turns to Kim asking if he is training Puck. Kim replies that yes, they are done today. Park intervenes. He asks to teach him more, because this is not enough, to which Kim responds with a categorical refusal. Grandfather again asks Kim to train Park. Since grandfather is indebted to him, he asks him to help his friend with training. Making a malicious face, Park agrees with his grandfather, saying that he should help his friend. For the second time, Kim says that they are not friends. Confused, Kim looks at the beans on her plate again, not daring to eat further. Park notices the beans on Kim's plate and is already reaching for them with his chopsticks to take them away. At this moment, his chopsticks are deflected by a sharp blow from Kim's spoon. Almost colliding head-on with Park, Kim demands not to touch him, as he will eat his beans. Park is sarcastic, because Kim does not eat beans. Grandfather watches their stupid squabble from the sidelines, smiling good-naturedly. With a beaming smile on his face, Grandfather quietly says that dinner seemed to be delicious. A new early morning is coming. The sun is just appearing in the sky. Kim starts a conversation about how Park should be able to balance his body, and not just hold it up with the strength of his arms. Park gets into the planche again, trying to hold out in it for as long as possible. However, soon enough he falls to the ground exhausted, complaining that he is dying. However, lying on the ground, he still smiles at one moment, full of joy, and says that this is fun. With this, he clearly angers the watching Kim, who looks at him with silent indignation for some time. Finally, Kim asks if Park really thinks this is all funny. Kim demands that we take this more seriously. This is not some kind of game for children. Kim adds that otherwise he will take it as a frivolous attitude and leave. Park apologizes, admitting his mistake. He concentrates, and says that he is as serious as possible now and intends to continue. In between, Puck says that he used to do a lot of cool things, but when he achieved success, everything became not so cool. But today's training was successful. Kim explodes and is indignant. Park is too weak, and no matter how hard he tries, this is reality. Turning away, Kim hurries away, leaving the final comment that there is no point in telling him this. Park gets up and says that he hasn't finished training yet, but Kim simply invites him to do whatever he wants, and he leaves. Park shouts to him to stop, but an enraged Kim only demands to shut up and leave him alone. Distracted, Kim doesn't notice the pillar he crashes into hard, then swearing loudly, Park laughs and asks him to repeat it. After some time, they sit on a bench, and Kim rubs the bruised area. Park spoke first. He thought that Kim would never teach him, and asks why he suddenly agreed. Kim thinks to himself that this is all for the sake of his grandfather, and Park, without waiting for an answer, thanks him. Kim, remaining silent for a moment, replies that by pretending to be friendly, they will not become friends. Park is outraged by what was said. Park doesn't understand, because Kim helped him, and therefore Park should thank him. Kim doesn't answer. He opens his mouth, as if he doesn't know what to answer in this situation. Their conversation is interrupted by people approaching. One of them shouts loudly, addressing a certain Hyun, that he has found someone. Kim and Park turn to the group of guys. Park is interested in who came to them. It turns out that this is a company of already familiar hooligans. One of them, a blonde man, makes sure that it was Puck who beat up their guys yesterday. The big badass, surrounded by bullies, notes that they have finally found Puck. The same one who addressed Puck offers to simply follow him silently without answering, and the bully seems to have already seen Puck somewhere. The blonde threatens to show what a big mistake Puck made yesterday. The bullies behind him warn him to be careful. As soon as the blonde starts talking about the conditions under which he will spare Puck, a heavy object flies into his nose with force. Blood sprays from the blonde's nose. He screams in pain throughout the entire area, and the hooligans stand aside in fear. Addressing the hooligans frozen in place, Puck notes that they are on time. Because it's time to stretch their legs, he challenges them. Completely beside himself with anger, Puck shouts menacingly that he will kill them all here. Two hooligans shout that he is crazy, and how dare he talk to them like that. Rising, the blonde demands to kill him, and the big man takes him by the shoulder and asks him to wait. To the blonde's question, the big man replies that he recognized him as Puck, which surprised him greatly. The big guy explains that he doesn't know him personally, but he's surprised why he's here. Puck is a very famous guy. 3 years ago, his friend was studying at a local high school. He was injured by a dancing kid. There were 8 of them. He smashed them all. Someone from the crowd shouts out that they also heard about this, and meanwhile the heated Puck grabs the face of one of them. Is Puck really the same dancing guy from the big guy's memories? They wonder. A picture of the past. A schoolboy turns to a certain Sunbei, saying that he brought him water. The action takes place on the playground. A group of schoolchildren smoke on the playground. One complains that cigarettes hurt their throats. The second suggests changing cigarettes. A certain guy scolds 2 schoolchildren, indignant that they brought only 30,000 won. He demands the normal amount, or they are finished. This money cannot buy anything. With this he throws money in the face of one of the schoolchildren and demands to go and buy them cigarettes, unnoticed. This is done by Kim Jong-un, the leader of the high school gang. He demands another 80,000, so that they look for it even in their mother's wallet. But an hour later they carry it. The schoolchildren try to object by calling him Un. In response he gets angry, calls them idiots, and says that his name is Un, not Un. Un signals the schoolchildren away. The other guys say not to hit the schoolchildren, because they still have to bring money. One of the guys notices Puck's team training while smoking on the sidelines. One of the trainees asks if everything is done for today. The second replies that Soya won't come because of cleaning the house, and Park is late again. Un is interested in the team. One of the guys wonders if these schoolchildren were taught to greet their elders and whether they need to be taught. Puck runs hastily, every now and then checking the time on his watch. If he is late, then he will face a punishment. I wonder what it will be. A crowd of third-grade students moves towards the hurrying Puck. When he sees Un, Pak politely bows and greets. Un is surprised to realize that Pak is also from this company. Woong asks if Park is with those dancing guys. Park confirms and asks what's wrong. Suddenly, Un grabs the startled Park by the hair, saying that it pisses him off. He mocks Puck, says not to be a fool and it's better to go home, learn lessons, calls their dancing complete crap. Having said all this, Un forcefully pushes Pak to the side, and he frees himself from the grip. Puck straightens up, silently straightens the hair on his head, and looks at Un appraisingly. The team meets Puck, who has finally arrived, and he apologizes for being late. One of the team asks about Puck's condition, answering that everything is fine, and he sees that everything is fine. Puck offers to dance. Then Pak notices something under the eye of Chan, his comrade, and asks him what it is. A fairly large burn is now visible on Chan's face under his eye. They tell him that this was done by high school students who came up and beat them, and threw a cigarette butt in Chan's face. Puck looks around, looks as if into nothingness, and silently ponders for a while. Chan turns to Hyun and says that everything is fine, and he is not in pain at all. However, Puck is already heated. He shouts that he will kill these bastards, and his jaw is clenched with anger. Meanwhile, in the present, Puck knocks back another bully with a powerful blow to the chest. The big guy ends the story by saying that everyone saw him fight, and no one else touched him. The blonde asks whether Puck is a famous hooligan, or whether he is not local, and both questions are answered in denial. Puck jumps into the crowd and, grabbing the next opponent by the clothes, continues to fiercely fight alone against the entire crowd. The blonde asks who this guy is then. The big guy stutters in complete confusion. Pictures of the past pop up in my head. Beaten high school students led by Un on the playground. I remember Puck's face, filled with rage after the fight. And now, looking at the even more furious Puck, the big man recognizes him as exactly that dancer, and calls him a real monster. Another bully receives a strong blow to the jaw from Puck. Without thinking of stopping, he grabs one of the attackers by the clothes and reaches for the second. Together with a sharp blow to the stomach, Puck throws the third attacker into the air. Continuing to hold the captured one, Puck leans on him and jumps high, kicking the fourth one in the jaw. The entire crowd of hooligans gradually falls unconscious on the ground under a hail of Puck's blows, as if he really is not a person. The blonde is scared. He asks if Puck is a god. The big guy replies that he looks like a wild animal, and in response the question is what to do. The big man faces a difficult choice. If he is beaten, he will lose his authority, and if he fights with Pak, he will definitely lose. At this moment, the big man notices Kim, who has been standing nearby and watching all this time. Catching the big man's gaze, Kim nervously looks away. At this moment, the big guy comes up with an idea that can change the situation in his favor. Puck stands surrounded by the bodies of defeated opponents, gradually regaining his breath. He turns over his shoulder and looks at the remaining hooligans who are afraid to even approach him. The blonde nervously asks him to wait and offers to talk first, surprisingly politely. Puck is still angry and refuses, because at first they climbed on Grandpa, and now they dared to come back in a crowd and mess with him again. Puck leans over them in a rage, coming closer, and says that they have nowhere to run. He will beat them and they will apologize to their grandfather. A big man in the distance from behind him loudly shouts to him to stop. He demands that Park stand still, while he holds Kim, pinning him to the ground, and threatens to twist his arm if Park moves. Kim is held tightly by the big guy, who continues that he will really break Kim's arm, but will not do anything if Park stands. Puck silently listens to the big man, glaring at him full of anger. The big man smiles evilly, pleased with his victory in advance, and asks again if Puck understood him. He calls one of the remaining hooligans a freak and commands him not to stand, but to attack. Thinking this is the perfect moment to attack, one of the bullies speeds up and runs at Puck. Fearing the answer, he closes his eyes tightly and hesitantly hits, but Puck doesn't resist and simply takes the blow to the face. The bully recoiled when he saw Puck hitting the ground flat after the blow, and did not believe what had happened. Seeing that Puck is not resisting, the blonde runs up and sharply kicks him in the stomach. Both attackers do not understand why he does not resist. One laughs evilly. Following this, a hail of blows hits the lying Puck from all sides. He tightens his jaw, but silently endures these blows. The big man savors the victory, thinking that now Puck is definitely screwed. He remembers the past again and thinks that then, too, it would have been worth using his friends and he would have given up. Kim shouts at Pak to run away quickly. He doesn't understand why Pak doesn't fight. Kicks hit Puck's head. He tries to at least cover his head with his hands. The big guy directs Kim to watch silently, and jokes that it's cute that he wants to help his friend so much. The blonde makes another wide swing for a sweeping kick. A terrible crunching sound is heard throughout the area, hearing which, Puck shudders violently. Along with the crunch, an equally terrible cry of Puck, exhausted from phantom pain, is heard. His prosthesis broke under the blows. The stunned attackers stopped, thinking they had broken his leg. They were amazed that he fought them without one leg. Kim hardly raises her head and does not immediately realize what happened. With realization, his face fills with horror. He realizes that Puck is missing a leg. Kim finally understands that he spent every competition and every training without a leg, and continued to rejoice at his success. A voice comes from the side, demanding that the attackers stop beating their student. This is the voice of Secretary Song approaching. She calmly announces that if they continue to destroy their future, then everyone here will die. Quite a lot of time passes. The sun is gradually setting below the horizon. It's terribly hot outside. Sitting on the steps, grandfather waves his fan and wonders why the guys are late. The gate opens, preparing to greet as if an unexpected guest. Grandfather gets up and comes closer. Having opened the gate, the grandfather clearly recognizes the guest who has shown up to him. This guest is Joseph. From his smile you can understand that he is glad to see them again. Grandfather shocks Joseph by asking him why he came so late. He talked about it, but grandfather reminded him that he is no longer young. Joseph remembers that it has been 20 years since his grandfather set the world record for pull-ups. Grandfather replies that this is in the past, and he grew up and became a man. From a famous businessman to a famous athlete. He remembers that Joseph said that he came to Korea in search of people involved in workouts, and asks if he has seen Kim. Joseph smiles, clearly planning something. He is silent for a while, then reassures that they will come soon. Meanwhile, Song's arrival on the set is met with acute misunderstanding on the part of the bullies. Sleep stands firm and stern. With her back straight, she exudes confidence with her entire appearance. Contorting her face with barely restrained aggression, she demands to let Puck go, then he will let them go unharmed. The hooligans are not bothered by this. The blonde asks what kind of nonsense she is talking about. The second one calls her a lady and offers to get out of there. This answer makes Song so furious that even her round glasses seem ready to crack. Since the bully is getting in the way, it means that now they will all be in a lot of pain. That's what her subsequent threat sounds like. This threat clearly offends the bully. He comes closer, beckoning her to attack. He does not believe that she can defeat him. At that very moment he was dumbfounded. Air whirlwinds seemed to swirl above his head. Only a moment passes, and suddenly with a strong blow, Song sends the bully flying and he hits the ground with force at her feet. The blonde opens his mouth in surprise. It seems simply impossible to believe what happened. The big guy holding Kim also looks up and excitedly asks how she did it. Sleep ignores any questions, just adjusts the fallen glasses on his face. The blonde from behind demands an answer from her. First of all to the question of who she is. She is silent, but again flares up with anger, similar to an explosion of magma in a living volcano. Sleep closes the distance, and a powerful uppercut with the butt of her palm flies into the blonde's jaw. This single blow turns Sun, who doesn't even look at his opponent, into a victory pose, and sends the bully into the air. Dream, having sent the blonde boy flying, complains that Korean guys are rude. She shouts that these guys are garbage that does not decompose. She intends to continue the fight. The big guy, having let Kim go, thinks that she is definitely a monster, and he needs to run away before she kills her, which he does. He runs. While trying to escape, the big man is suddenly grabbed by the arm with enough force to stop him. The frightened big man exhales and turns to the one who grabbed him. And Kim grabbed him. His face expresses anger. He asks if the big guy offended his grandfather yesterday. Having understood the answer to his own question, he shouts out to the big guy that he won't run away, because he must apologize to his grandfather. The big man's face grimaces in pain as Kim's hand tightens on his wrist. It hurts so much that Kim seems to be about to break his arm. The voice of the approaching song can already be heard from the side of the platform. At this moment the big man realizes that if he is caught, he will be finished. He swings at Kim in an attempt to hit him and break free of the hold. Kim barely has time to react and dodge a direct blow to the face. The big man screams furiously, demanding to be released, and continues to throw punches. Kim receives multiple blows to the face, some of which she blocks with her free hand. After many blows, the big man is exhausted, breathing heavily. He is amazed that Kim is still holding on. Kim's breathing also becomes unsteady. He holds the big man's hand in a daze, thinking only about his grandfather. This is his family, he repeats like a mantra, and the big guy is the one who offended his grandfather. Kim shouts out that she won't forgive him, and the big guy replies that since he wants to die, he will help him with it. The big man's fist with a wide swing almost reaches Kim's face, but is stopped by the hand of the approaching Pak. The big guy is so stunned by what he saw that he even asks if it's him. Puck turns to him with a look filled with anger, asking what this bastard is doing. The big man is perplexed, asking Puck about this promise. Some time ago, I remember, the big man grabbed Kim and promised to break his arm if Puck moved. Shouting out what the big guy promised to do, Puck raises his leg to strike. Grabbing him by the head, Puck demands that he keep his word, and calling him a freak, he hits him in the nose with his knee. A moment later, as blood spreads across the big man's face, he only has time to think about the shame of his defeat. Along with the blow, the big man is knocked out, falls flat on the grass and is knocked out. Kim asks with some awkwardness how Pak's legs are. Pak irritably replies that everything is fine and he didn't even notice anything. The big man lies unconscious. It seems that he will not be able to get up very soon. Waking up, the entire crowd of hooligans kneels in front of Song. Park, staying with Kim a little deeper in the forest plantation, grabs his knee and complains about his sore leg. Kim, having remained silent for a while, quietly wonders if something is wrong with Puck. Park turns to Kim and looks at him silently, waiting for what he will say. Kim is also silent, carefully thinking and choosing the right words. Up to this point, Park had been training with only one leg, and Kim realizes this. Kim cannot understand how, even in such conditions, Park continued to smile and have fun. Finally he asks why Park decided to take up this sport. Puck repeats with a sigh, he already said it, just because it's cool. Kim looks thoughtfully at his feet. Park asks not to ask about this anymore, because he doesn't know what to say if Kim doesn't understand. Finally Kim answers, he really doesn't understand, and Park is absolutely right about that. Along with Kim's agreement, Park's eyes bulge in surprise and looks back at him again. Thoughtful, Puck raises his eyes to the sky, thinking to himself. After a while of thinking, Puck smiles widely and closes his eyes. Puck burst out laughing, asking Kim if he finally understood everything. Finally, the stars rise above the sky and night falls. The grandfather in the house screams, not understanding what happened to the guys. He catches them with Sun at the gate, and anxiously asks what they were doing and why everyone was injured. Kim holds Puck's arm. Puck is the first to explain that they met a boar on the way home. Joseph turns to Song. Believing that she missed everything, Song relays Puck's words that the leader of the hooligans has escaped. Sun adds that the attackers had a tattoo she recognized, something like a fish bone. Joseph, who heard this, says that we need to find out more about them. Sun agrees. Meanwhile, Grandpa has taken out a first aid kit and helps Pak and Kim treat their wounds. Joseph approaches Puck and offers to go with them. He will take Puck home. Pak asks Joseph to answer honestly whether he knew that Kim was living with his grandfather, and whether he sent Pak here on purpose. Puck states his guess that Joseph wants to take Kim on the team. Joseph laughs. He offers to just see what happens while Grandpa puts a band-aid on Kim's arm. In the company of Sun, Joseph talks about something with Kim and gives him his business card. Kim peers thoughtfully at the business card, thinking about something of her own. Grandfather looks at Kim from behind. He was carefully watching what was happening. Joseph says let Kim think and tell them about his decision, and he calls Puck to come with him. Kim, again plunging into thought, silently watches Puck, Sun and Joseph leave. After a while, Kim continues to sit on the threshold and look at Joseph's business card. Grandpa comes up, saying that it's late and telling Kim to eat and go to bed. Grandpa takes a closer look at Kim, asking if Kim is still thinking about Joseph's proposal. Kim replies he always told him he would make him happy. Kim remembers when he earned money and bought his grandfather new clothes, but now he wants to earn more. He also remembers Puck, noting that this guy is very strange. He trains because he has fun. Without one leg he continues to train and have fun. Kim can't understand how Park can have fun with all this. Grandfather smiles kindly and sits on the threshold next to Kim. Grandfather always thought that he could not replace his parents, but now he is sincerely proud of Kim. Grandpa also notes that he has made a good friend, but Kim blurts out that they are not friends, to Grandpa's surprise. Grandfather reaches out again. He knows that Kim feels guilty for robbing their house when he was little. Grandpa knows that Kim has Grandma's comb, but it's just Grandma's usual thing, so Kim shouldn't blame himself for the past. Kim is the most important thing that Grandpa has, so Grandpa will be happy when Kim is happy. Therefore, Grandfather asks him not to think about anything and do what he wants. Kim's eyes widen as he listens intently to his grandfather. It seems that his grandfather's words sound like a revelation to him, which makes him think. Kim wonders what he really wants. It's a new morning at school and the time when the workout club gathers. Puck, standing on the street, lifts his head high, exclaiming in surprise. He doesn't understand where the huge extension came from in the schoolyard and when they even managed to put it up. Soya says that a few days ago she was brought by helicopters. Kwon added Joseph's words that this is a new training place. Soya asks Park if he repaired his dentures and what Mom said. Park repaired them. Puck remembers an angry mother with a frying pan. She was ready to kill him on the spot. The story makes the girls feel terrible. Out of nowhere, as usual, Joseph appears in a colorful crimson jacket, greets everyone and terribly scares Puck. Joseph is happy to welcome Puck to the new workout machine he ordered especially for them. They go inside. Puck opens his mouth wide, loudly surprised at what he sees. He exclaims how great it all looks. He sees a lot of exercise equipment in a huge space. Joseph separately adds that there are also toilets and showers. There is simply no better place for training. Now their activities will be here. Park suggests they start quickly. Burning with impatience, he calls Kwon master, asking if she will train. Kwon, meanwhile, has already changed clothes and confirms what was said. Park is surprised at her speed. Joseph notes, watching from the side, that there is one more person left. At this moment, the expected person comes to train in their gym. Soya turns around and instantly recognizes him, causing her mouth to open wide in surprise. This person turns out to be Kim, who apparently accepted Joseph's offer. Kim slowly walks deeper into the training room and looks around. Soya realizes that this is Kim, a well-known figure in the workout community, and she opens her mouth in surprise that he is here. Turning around, Pak takes a closer look and notes that Kim has finally arrived. Joseph turns to Kim, asking if he has come, if he has made a decision. Kim answers with consent. Soya shouts out, not believing that Kim will be with them, while Kwon doesn't even understand who came. It will be announced to the whole room that he, the #1 swimmer in Korea, is now training with them, from which Kim himself flinches. He interrupts the delight from the side, explaining that he came to refuse. He expresses regret for such an answer. Joseph asks if he can ask about Kim's reasons for refusing. Puck, peeking over the girl's shoulders, asks what he means. Kim replies that she plans to create her own team. Having heard what was said, the whole team stands in a stupor, comprehending what they said. Kim himself looks at Pak and is immersed in thoughts that he is one of the reasons. Kim remembers Park's words that sports that are not fun are not fun. I also remember his words that Pak himself trains because he is interested, and besides, it's cool. Kim thinks it might be hard to be friends with a guy like that, but he's incredibly driven. Kim wants to fight him one more time. That's what he really wants to do. Park interrupts Kim's thoughts, urging him to go through more boldly. With a mocking grimace, Puck looks at him and teases him that he is afraid of not being able to cope with him, assures him that he will not touch him. Kim clearly doesn't like what Pak said. He is noticeably angry. Kim explains that he is embarrassed that he will be treated like a bully because of Park. A confused Park makes excuses to Kwon. Colliding head-on with Kim, Pak reminds him of his whining about his grandfather. Kim gets angry, but then Pak jokes about his bean lunch. Joseph, Soya, and Kwon watch from the sidelines as their seemingly unplanned argument ends. The swearing goes far beyond the walls of the training hall, and there is also dissatisfaction with the fact that the guys have set up a kindergarten here. At the beginning of the training, Kwan is practicing on the horizontal bar. She rises on the horizontal bar on her hands, holding her body vertical. While practicing the next technique, she spins her body around its axis. Her movements are becoming more and more frisky, and Kim is watching her training from the side. Kim, as if spellbound, catches the peculiarities of Kwan's training technique. He addresses Pak by name. Pak demands not to address him that way. Kim's question, however, is whether it was Pak who originally called him. Park understands that the conversation is about her, his master. Kim does not understand which master we are talking about. Kim understands, but asks if Pak is younger than her. Pak replies that such things are not important in relation to a master and a student. Kim did not know that there was a person in Korea with such a high level of skill. This is a rather complex freestyle technique. To achieve this level, you need to increase muscle mass, says Kim. He further adds that despite her petite body, she does great work. He is confident that she has developed excellent muscle memory, so she can easily perform high-level techniques with her body. Park expresses understanding. Kim ends by saying that such people are rarely seen in Korea. Looking back at Kwan, Park thinks that this is all she is, and that he himself wants to be like her. He remembers his grandfather's words that more training and practice will provide him with the desired result. Plunging into thought for a few moments, he seems to agree with his grandfather. Kwan herself, returning to the phone on the tripod, realizes that she probably didn't turn on the camera before starting. Evening is approaching and the sun is gradually setting behind the horizon. Someone is already getting ready to leave. It turns out that Kim is leaving. Already outside, Kim asks him to be careful on the way home. Kim addresses Park by his full name, intending to say something. Kim remembers Pak's words, his gratitude for his help. Then Pak helped Kim, saved his grandfather, for which Kim decides to thank him. Not expecting this at all, Park smiles slightly, answering that everything is fine. At this point, Kim says goodbye and, turning around, indicates that they will see each other again. Secretary Song finds this surprising. According to her calculations, Kim would accept the offer, because he desperately needs money. Along with Joseph's laughter, Dream realizes that he already knew everything. Joseph laughs again, saying that in sports there are always rivals, and Kim did not accept the offer due to his rivalry with Park. Joseph gets genuine pleasure from watching what is happening. He can't wait for the finale. Sun caustically notes that Joseph's face is like that of a child who came to see the circus. Joseph is embarrassed by such a comparison. Joseph's smile stretches from ear to ear. Somehow he's been waiting for this moment. About a month after the new section was created at the school, some students decided to ignore him. When Joseph himself arrived, most were only interested in his arrival. In addition, not all students realized that this was a training club. Many thought that it was more like a bunker. But the first step of the workout club was taken. However, the first dissatisfied people appeared. A healthy man looms over the director in his office. He is outraged that the land promised for the gym was given to Joseph. The director responds by recalling that those who came themselves decided to complete work on the project due to high costs. The man reminds that the school must be promoted to glorify its sports world. Otherwise the school's prestige will decrease. From the side, Joseph hears a demand to give their hall to another club, in response to which he mockingly reminds them of their past failure. For several years now, Joseph says, their athletes have been performing poorly, and they should be ashamed to demand such things. This clearly angers the man. He demands Joseph to choose his words more carefully. Joseph jokingly apologizes for being in charge here. The man stands over Joseph and says that he is shamelessly taking advantage of the school and asks if he is trying to make it his. Joseph replies with a smile that everything is not like that. He is investing in the school, in particular in the buffet, the food in which has noticeably improved. The man doesn't know what Joseph is trying to achieve. He is against it, and asks if Joseph can justify himself to the education department. Adjusting his glasses, Joseph frowns and replies that it will be difficult. Problems may arise. Joseph confidently replies that if this is so, then he will bear the expenses of their club. He will give them the necessary amounts, if necessary, replace old things with new ones, which puts the men into a stupor. However, in return, he asks them to compete with his workout club. The man asks again, not believing that everything is so simple. Joseph replies that this is a special training club. On the issue of refusal, Joseph explains that if they win, they will double their annual budget. Otherwise they will accept them. The men are huddled together and whispering, discussing Joseph's proposal. Finally they finish discussing. The man turned to Joseph again, asking if he was deceiving and would keep his word. Joseph confirms and indicates the time 3 days after school. Asks the director, the same one thinks how they could leave as quickly as possible. The man gives his consent. Their sports club is against the workout club, fair game. The man grins, expressing his readiness for competition, and looks intently at Joseph. Joseph squints slyly and calmly, measuredly suggests just doing it. Deep evening falls on the city. Only the remnants of the setting sun faintly illuminate the streets. Somewhere in a closed hall in another place, boxers are training. 2 athletes spar in the ring. While the first throws punches, the second deftly dodges them. With strangled exhalations, the already exhausted first boxer carries out attack after attack with direct blows. None of the blows catches the second one. He continues to skillfully dodge. A man observes the sparring, telling someone that the answer has not yet been given and asking his opinion. The beaten man kneels behind him. The man folds his arms behind his back and scolds him for his cowardly escape. The man turns over his shoulder to the man sitting and asks what kind of death he prefers. The man sitting trembles heavily with his whole body and, stammering, asks to forgive him and give him one last chance. The man comes up and bends down. He laughs at such a request and says that if he were the kids who beat him, he would have dealt with him. He demands that he listen carefully. If he is caught again and done this way, there will be no more mercy. His speech is interrupted by a roar that can be heard throughout the entire hall. The man turns to the ring. The first fighter is knocked out and falls flat in the ring. The man turns to the second, remembering the predictions given to him. A fighter shouldn't have beaten a professional in 3 months. But he did it in a month. He says it doesn't matter whether he's a champion or not. The man answers, the fighter is still young. In response he laughs. The main thing for him is that it was fun. The man offers to try something new. The excited fighter says that he recently found an interesting body workout video. The man opens the tablet and looks, explaining that he is probably talking about workout. The fighter's eyes light up. This is exactly it, and he would like to try something like that, which not everyone is able to repeat. Night falls on the city, and somewhere in its center the night lights light up. An event is taking place in one of the evening establishments. The hand of an unknown person reaches out to the approaching waiter, and its owner orders wine and appetizers. The waiter confirms the order and leaves. A group of 3 men, members of the school's sports club, hit the piles and have a blast. Teacher Kim asks Teacher Beck if he runs fast, and he laughs, confirming that he runs great. Beck says that today is a great day, because next week they will receive a lot of money, and the teachers agree with this. Another teacher is amazed that Joseph himself suggested such a thing. Beck complains about Joseph's stupidity in deciding to compete with them. However, what is happening seems suspicious, but Beck assures that these are exercises that they do every day. Even though Joseph's action was stupid, he says they can make a lot of money. There's nothing wrong with it, and it's a reason to drink. The third teacher, named Ken, asks if they can use this money to build a new sports club. Beck lifts his head arrogantly and says that in any case they are already winning. Khan recalls that they have not moved forward for 10 years. But with money they will move forward. Now there is little budget allocated. Because, having built a new sports business, they will become rich, says Beck. Other teachers admire his resourcefulness. With all of Joseph's money they will already be rich. They drink to it, and call the waiter to order more alcohol. The appointed day arrives. The time is 5:30. Classes are over. The crowd has gathered on the platform near the horizontal bars and is asking many questions about when it starts and where the participants are. The first group, a football club led by Teacher Ken, approaches the site. Following them is the athletics club, led by Teacher Kim. Teacher Beck leads the basketball club following them, whose members stand out for their tall stature. Beck approaches Teacher Kim, asking if Joseph has arrived. Teacher Kim checks the time. There are still 10 minutes before the start. Meanwhile, someone from BJ's team greets the entire area, inviting the audience to have fun today. He came here because interesting competitions are taking place here and he is filming a blog. Beck is perplexed and wonders why some blogger came to them. But then the crowd's attention turns to a new person. The crowd's eyes are focused on brother-in-law, the famous beauty who also came to this competition. She answers the question of how long ago she graduated from school, responding in disbelief that if they don't believe, then there is no need to ask. Teacher Beck is confused and doesn't understand why they all suddenly arrived at this school. Teacher Kong addresses Beck saying that Joseph has arrived. Joseph looks extremely confident as he walks alongside Puck, holding his hands in his pockets and smiling. Soya and Kwan follow. They look around anxiously, not understanding why there are so many people here. Beck approaches Joseph, smiles slyly and asks how his mood is. Joseph apologizes for being late. He was busy preparing. Turning to the site, to the teams, Joseph notes that there really are a lot of people. Beck chuckles, explaining that all their athletes are fans of Joseph and all want to compete. He caustically adds that the numbers don't matter, because they didn't discuss this in the first place. Looking closely at his interlocutor, Joseph confirms that the number of people really does not matter. Buck's face twisted in surprise. He didn't expect Joseph to agree so easily. Flashing a smile, Joseph takes out the papers and says that the participants were not told about the restrictions. They themselves gave him consent to this. The trio of teachers are in a stupor, completely not understanding what they are talking about. They pick up copies of the agreement and shout in indignation that they didn't sign something like this. Joseph assures them that these are their signatures. I remember the last drinking party, where the teachers in the company of girls walked and drank a lot. The girl who asked for more alcohol asked Beck to pay and sign in advance so that there would be no problems. She asked teachers Kim and Ken to sign, and they signed in a state of intoxication. The girl left saying that she would bring them more drinks. Walking out the door, the girl put on her glasses. It was Secretary Song who called Joseph on her way out and handed over the teachers' signatures. The teachers attacked Joseph, shouting that this is a crime and they will report it to the police. Joseph retorts that he has a recording of them discussing the theft of school money, and it is unknown who the culprit might be. He looks at them menacingly and asks if he should report them to the police, which scares the trio. Having gathered, already with a serious look, Joseph suggests starting and repeats that the number of people is only welcome. Beck asks how many there are. Joseph replies that there are only 3. However, despite their number, there will be only one participant. This participant comes forward. The named member is Kwan, introduced as Jeannie. Kwan looks extremely concentrated, with subtle excitement visible on her face. In her memories, Puck shouted out a question in the hall about whether they decided to organize a competition for the club. Joseph confirms. Kwan adds that something unpleasant probably happened. She asks who will participate. Joseph confidently states that she will participate. Kwan shudders and opens his mouth wide. She nervously asks again. She asks if Joseph is confident in his choice, since she is not particularly talented to participate in such competitions. Joseph expresses faith that she will succeed, and Puck echoes this, confident that she will show the strength of their club. The opponent will be the sports club of their own school, Joseph explains, so it won't be difficult. Also, with a particularly devilish expression on his face, he says that the competition will be in athletics. Ordinary athletes do not pay enough attention to such exercises, so they will win, and he will show what pathetic coaches they are. Puck joins Joseph in his devilish anticipation. Joseph now proposes to come up with a plan for their ruin. Now on the court, Kwan is a little scared to participate. She is worried whether she will be able to win. Beck approaches Joseph with a question about the conditions of the competition. Joseph takes out and shows the teachers a very ordinary exercise board. The exercise will be balance on the board. The workout is designed to strengthen the pelvic and lower muscles. It will be difficult for a beginner. The rules are simple. The one who stays on the board the longest wins. Meanwhile, Kwan purses his lips, gathering his thoughts before the competition, and Joseph suggests they begin. Before the competition, there is a block on the court on which the board and plate for the exercise are located. There are a lot of such boards around. It is clear that everyone is given a try to do the exercise before starting. The participants really try out. Many cannot even get on the board. One of the spectators approaches the board and tries to stand on it. He successfully climbs. However, soon enough he is swaying in all directions and it becomes difficult to maintain his balance. He barely has time to jump off the board to the laughter of the crowd. Beck nervously examines the plate, believing that it was not worth expecting something easy. Joseph comes out, indicating that when the whistle blows, they need to stand at the plate. All rounds will be held minute by minute, he explains, with participants listening carefully. The rounds will be conditionally limited. Joseph continues to explain the rules. The competition will end when only one participant remains. Everyone only has one chance. Joseph raises the whistle to his lips, ready to give the go-ahead. Finally, a loud whistle is heard across the court, indicating the start of the competition. Participants immediately climb onto the boards and begin the exercise. The bloggers broadcasting admire what they saw. They haven't seen a body balancing competition for a long time, It's an interesting spectacle. Kwon also climbs onto the board and Park loudly wishes her luck. The first participants begin to squirm from the complexity of the exercise. Bloggers comment on what is happening, the tension grows, the participants drop out one by one. The teachers are outraged that one of them did not last even a minute. There are fewer and fewer participants. Beck seems to be calming down. There are only a few seconds left. A nearby crowd is having fun, which greatly irritates Buck, and he shouts at them to shut up. After the first screening of participants, there are very few participants left in the competition. Some make an effort and are clearly tense. The exercise is not easy for them. Others can honestly barely stand on their feet, exhausted from tension. Kwon continues to confidently stay on the board, doesn't even move, and there are only 7 participants left. Park is amazed at how straight Kwon stands, and Soya confirms that she never even moved. A minute later, Joseph marks the beginning of the first round. The teachers are at a loss that they haven't even started yet. Joseph says that the next step is to perform one squat on the board. The first one doesn't even understand how this can be done. He can barely stay on the board. The second one repeats like a mantra that he needs to sit down, and tries to sit down. The third tries to sit down extremely slowly, his legs trembling violently. Halfway through the squat, the third one opens his mouth wide and loses his balance. He falls off the board, and the judge in the person of Joseph announces that they have -1 participant. Kwon wonders if she can squat and stand on the board. Of course, Kwon quickly squats down as if effortlessly and stands back up to Park's enthusiastic exclamation. The next participant falls and is eliminated at the end of the round. Everyone else has passed. Now there are only 5 people left, Joseph means, and the competition continues. Joseph marks the next round and asks the guys if they brought what they were supposed to bring. Puck rolls a net with basketballs closer to the competition site. As a result, there are 2 filled nets with balls on the court. Bloggers look at this questioningly and wonder why they are here. Joseph shows his teeth in a wide smile, looking towards the balls in anticipation. Puck takes one of the balls in his hand and swings it wide, ready to throw. With a shout, he aims the ball towards one of the participants, who flies in front of his stunned face. Joseph explains that in the next round they need to avoid obstacles, basketballs that are thrown at them from a distance of 10 meters. The teacher nervously shouts, "They will throw until the balls run out. There is no way to avoid this." The throwers are joined by Soya and others watching the competition. A hail of basketballs flies towards the stunned participants. One immediately falls. The second shouts to aim more carefully and attentively. There is a shout from the side for the throwers to make them lose their balance. Kwon stays on the board with confidence and a smile as she dodges one ball after another. Beck shouts that there is only one person there, and is indignant that no one can hit Kwon. She dodges well. One of the participants looks directly at the ball, straightens his arms, and is about to catch it. The contestant exclaims triumphantly as he catches the ball flying straight at him. However, having caught this ball, he slides off the board and stands on the ground a couple of steps behind. The team scolds him somewhere on the sidelines, because this is not basketball for catching balls. Beck almost cries from how stupid they are. The balls continue to fly over Kwon's head, who still confidently maintains her balance. Puck admires her great abilities, how confidently she dodges all the balls. Joseph notes her innate reflexes and sense of balance, which is a rather rare talent. The real goal of today's competition is to find more talented people. You cannot win by competing with simple sports. However, with the help of a unique board workout, people will think about the difference between athletics and a sports club. He invited bloggers to have a larger audience. This game would be their first step. Joseph turns to the watching Puck, and this child also poses a special question. Finally, the ball carts were empty, and not a single ball was left. There are only 2 people left to compete. It is difficult to count how many balls she dodged. Joseph scratches his chin, not understanding why there are only 2 of them left. He expected that everything would end here, and does not know what to come up with. Joseph turns to BJ, the blogger, and offers to pick the final round. Then, after thinking a little, BJ invites the participants to do a handstand. The teachers shout indignantly that this is a stupid idea and they won't be able to do it. However, at the same moment, Kwon gets into a handstand, continuing to balance on the board. From what they saw, the teachers almost burst into tears, almost foamed at the mouth. They realized their defeat. Kwon remains the last participant, and, to the enthusiastic exclamations of the crowd, wins. She smiles and blushes barely noticeably. This is her first confident victory and all eyes are on her. the competition is over. Another day rises above the school. As always, classes are held. It's lunchtime and the teachers slowly gather in the staff room for a snack. One of the teachers addresses someone from below, angrily telling him to get up. Students stand on the floor in a plank. The teacher requires them to bring explanatory notes at lunchtime and warns them not to run away. The blue-haired girl rises calmly, almost without shortness of breath, with a plaster on her face. Among other things, 2 other students also stand up with her. From their exhausted faces it is clear that the bar was difficult for them. The redhead turns to the blue-haired one, blaming her for everything. She threatens the blue-haired one to call the brothers and end her life. She responds by grinning with open anger and mocking the fact that the redhead is unable to cope on her own. Under her gaze, the girls were dumbfounded with horror. She clearly frightened them greatly. She moves closer to the girls, looms over them and threatens to kill them if they continue their antics. The girls were confused, trembled violently, and although forced, they agreed with the blue-haired one. Later it's lunchtime. Schoolchildren gather in the cafeteria to eat. 2 schoolgirls approach the blue-haired girl, whose name, as it turns out, is Ji-Yuna, who is having lunch at this time. They apologize to Ji for what she got. They didn't think that they could be attacked at their part-time job. One of the girls invites Ji to go shopping together next week, and Ji happily accepts the offer. After wishing Ji a bon appetit, the girls leave. Ji waves goodbye to them and smiles. A girl with green hair calls out to her and lightly shoves her with her shoulder, scolding her for sacrificing herself for those girls. Ji ignores this, which offends the green-haired girl, who notes that they have problems and asks if Ji has seen the video. Chewing her lunch leisurely, Ji looks up at her friend and asks what video she's talking about. 2 days ago, a video was posted on YouTube with the title Motor Technique of an Ordinary High School Student. People started watching it en masse on the channel of BJ, a blogger who was present at the competition. What they saw shocked people. It was something that stood out. In the video, Kwon performs her handstand in a competition, with BJ commenting on her cool balancing on the board. The next day the video became the most popular on the internet. This video with a very interesting title went viral in an instant, and was seen by all of Korea. The video also captured footage of how deftly Kwon dodged each of the balls thrown at that time. Before classes start, classmates are already in full swing discussing Kwon's performance at the competition. As soon as Kwon appears on the threshold of the classroom, her classmates immediately notice her. She opens her mouth wide in surprise, and in an instant a crowd of classmates appears in front of her. They celebrate Kwon's success, noting that she is an N-Tube star with over 1 million views. They admire what she does. Kwon turns around and thanks everyone for their kind words with a smile on his face. A slight blush appears on Kwon's face. She is sincerely happy about what happened. Evening falls on the city. The evening lights come on in Kwon's house. Ji chats with her sister Kwon Jeannie at home, and she enthusiastically calls her performance amazing. Thanks to her training, Jeannie became very popular. Jeannie replies that she was simply asked and could not refuse. Ji decides that the coach forced her. Jeannie sheepishly explains that the teachers had a conflict, and they staged a competition. Ji notes that Jeannie is a great guy in any case, which surprises her very much. Ji recalls that her sister wasn't particularly interested in anything since her dad passed away. Jeannie, confused, asks Ji what she means. Ji says that she doesn't have to pretend. Ji is just glad that her sister has finally found her favorite activity. They polish dishes together in the kitchen. Ji continues the conversation, inviting them to think. Ji suggests thinking about what mom will say when she finds out that Jeannie has become so popular. Jeannie is silent for some time. She doesn't know what to answer to this. Ji frowns, looking over his shoulder at Jeannie, as if with some kind of understatement. Jeannie replies that mom always works hard, tries for them, so they shouldn't bother her. Ji frowns more than ever. It's clear that something is gnawing at her, but she is forced to agree. The smile disappears from Jeannie's face, and she seems to be lost in thought. The ringtone of Jeannie's mobile phone started playing on the table. Someone is calling her. Looking at the phone, she recognizes the number of Puck who is calling her now, and thinks to herself why he's doing this all of a sudden. Picking up the phone, Jeannie is silent for a moment and finally answers the call. Puck's voice comes from the phone at full volume, stunning Jeannie. He saw the video and talks about it enthusiastically. Pak watched it immediately after it happened. Jeannie replies that she is a little shy, but he sincerely cannot understand why. Puck tells Jeannie that she was very talented to begin with, and it was only a matter of time before she became popular. This short conversation makes Jeannie blush. She thanks Puck for his support, and they say goodbye. They said goodbye. Jeannie remained for some time looking at the phone with a smile. Suddenly she felt a new sense of embarrassment. This was the first time she had talked to a guy on the phone like this. She says to herself that looking at Puck, she understands what an amazing person he is. Meanwhile, Mom returns home. Jeannie meets her and asks how work went. Mom, without completely taking off her shoes, looks up at Jeannie and addresses her. She saw the video of Jeannie that the company employees showed her. She is angry that Jeannie has been doing this all this time. Jeannie looks at her mother in confusion, excitement visible on her face. After changing clothes, Mom invites Jeannie to talk, and the city plunges into night. Somewhere at home, meanwhile, an unknown girl is watching a video of street training in Korea. On the monitor is the same video with Jeannie on BJ's channel. The girl is watching and notes Jeannie's perfect balance. After a few moments of watching, her mouth opens and she screams in surprise. A smug Joseph appears on the screen, standing with his back to the camera and watching the competition. The girl smiles slyly, chewing nearby chips and chuckles, realizing where Joseph is. Jeannie and Mom are talking. Mom asks about the club, if Jeannie is a good student. Mom angrily says that Jeannie is already in high school and it is important for her to study and not waste her time on something else. Ji listens at the door. Mom continues that there could be problems because of this club. Mom says she works hard for them by working late. Jeannie listens silently. She continues that Jeannie is an adult and should understand that her mother will not be on business trips often this year and will be at home more often. She asks Jeannie to try with her, while her face softens and even looks pitiful. Jeannie is silent for some time. Her gaze is lowered to one point, but still she is forced to agree with her mother. After a while, Jeannie looks out the window from her room, thinking about something of her own. She scribbles her pen on her notebook in prostration, doing her school homework. Her gaze is empty. Gradually she plunges deeper and deeper into herself. Before my eyes and the memories again the day of the competition, her success, and the eyes that were focused only on her. Closing her eyes, Jeannie lowers her head, filled with thoughts about what she should do with her training. During a short break, she breaks away from her studies and goes into the kitchen. Her gaze falls on the photo frame that stands on the side of the kitchen unit. The framed photo shows Dad, who is still alive, and Jeannie is overcome by memories of him. I remember my childhood, the time when she and her sister Ji played in the sandbox. Not far from them, Mom and Dad sat hugging each other on a bench. At that moment, Mom was sincerely happy. She looked at her still living Dad with all her love. While the children were playing, she snuggled up to Dad's shoulder and closed her eyes. The calm life was interrupted for my mother at once. The memories carry me back to that moment. Then reality itself seemed to plunge into darkness, with smoldering ashes still floating in the air. Turning around, my mother then saw firefighters helping the doctors carry the victim into the car. Only the hair of the covered victim was visible from under the sheet. However, Mom immediately recognized the lifeless Dad in the victim. He was no longer breathing, he was dead, and the realization of this sent her into an insane hysteria. When it was all over, the car drove away, and only she and her 2 daughters remained. Mom fell ill in serious condition and her daughters looked after her, bringing compresses to the bed. Even in this state, she asked the girls for forgiveness and assured them that she would soon get better so that they would not worry. The girls could not do anything. Then Mom lost Dad and was very worried. She barely got out of bed, and they wanted to relieve her pain as quickly as possible. Then the sisters took on many household responsibilities. They cleaned. They washed the dishes together, and generally cleaned up the whole house. And they even found instructions for the washing machine so that they could learn how to wash their own clothes. Mom watched from the side as her daughters grew up and learned to be independent. She looked at them with a smile, finding support in her difficult time. However, the memories of the loss returned to her again and again. Mom could not forget her father, so she cried a lot, and the girls could not help her. The girls grew up without the support of their mother, and took on many responsibilities to help her. Later, my mother worked a lot. She literally immersed herself in her work. She disappeared into endless meetings and business trips to forget the pain of losing a loved one. And then she became very distant from her daughters, plunging deeper and deeper into work. Everyone around was praising Jeannie and her diligence, noting how supportive she was to the family, and how proud her mother probably was of her. Jeannie's eyes then completely went out. She thought about the support of her mother and family all these years. At night, Jeannie sat at the computer, in between endless classes. With her dull gaze, Jeannie peered aimlessly into the emptiness of the monitor. But one day she saw something on the monitor that managed to attract her attention for the first time in so long. She saw the girls in the video doing their workout routine on the horizontal bar. Then Jeannie noted the girls' lightness and became interested in why they were doing this and why. Jeannie then got dressed and at night went out to a nearby area and walked up to the crossbar. She touched the horizontal bar, immediately noticing how cold it was. Her gaze rose to the crossbar. She remembered what she saw in the video and wanted to try it. With one leap, Jeannie climbed onto the cold horizontal bar that they had recently installed. Soon enough she got off of him. He was very cold and rough. She felt her feelings flare up again, despite the fact that her hands were very painful. Then she noted that she had not felt pain for a long time, and stubbornly tried to remember that moment. After that day, some kind of realization came to Jeannie. She clenched her fist tightly at the horizontal bar and decided to act. Jeannie began to work hard, devoting every day to training. She hung on this horizontal bar every day, trying to do at least one pull-up. On another winter day it was snowing. Not a day passed without this horizontal bar, just like the day on which she sat on it. She looked at the sky with revived eyes. She liked this feeling of freedom that training gave her. Coarse snow was falling from the sky, and even though the sky was filled with clouds, Jeannie felt good. The horizontal bar became her support. In the present, it is deep night in the city. Only the night lights of the surrounding houses are burning. Jeannie, as before, dresses and goes out. She wanders along the night street. It's been a while since Jeannie worked at night. Lately she's been practicing at school and at the park, she thinks. Come to think of it, ever since she met Puck, she'd been training around other people. She thinks about how he is always so positive, and wonders what will come of their venture. She remembers his words in the cafe that she doesn't have to call him Sunbae. It's enough to just call him Dong Ho Appa. It struck her then, and now she seems to be reliving that moment again. Despite what she said then, she still feels awkward calling him that. However, she remained silent for some time and timidly tried to call his name. A familiar voice was heard not far from her. It was the voice of Puck, who was training nearby and heard her. Jeannie's cheeks turn red. Her eyes open wide, and the realization comes that he has been here all along. Jeannie freezes in place like a pillar, as soon as Puck asks what she is doing on the playground so late. Red as a tomato, Jeannie cannot find the words to answer him. After a while, she manages to awkwardly greet him, wondering what he's doing here. Jeannie asks Puck if he trains every day. He replies that he does, because it's convenient and comfortable here. It's still the hot season, and his prosthetic leg is getting all sweaty and uncomfortable. Jeannie asks why. He replies that a sweaty prosthesis rubs the skin unpleasantly from the inside and needs to be dried every hour. He remembers how he spent his first summer wearing a prosthesis and got severe inflammation. Then he couldn't walk for several days. Park says that these were difficult and harsh times, to the point that he could not stand life. But thanks to these days, every day was fun, he says with a smile. Kwon looks at him as if spellbound, thinking about how jealous she is of him. She thinks that he never gives up and continues to move forward towards his dream. On the contrary, it seems to her that these thoughts make her look sadly downcast. Puck turns to Jeannie asking if everything is okay. She is confused, but still begins to speak. She is very glad that she joined the club. She has never had so much fun and pleasure in her life. Because she began to worry about whether she deserved all this fun. Having said this, she sadly lowered her gaze again. Puck widens his eyes in surprise and asks Jeannie about what was said. They don't have time to finish, but from the side they can hear the voice of little sister Ji calling her. Jeannie gets up and says goodbye to Puck, interrupting their conversation. Puck also says goodbye until tomorrow's meeting at the club. Stomping loudly along the park path, Jeannie leaves the site and goes to meet her sister. Ji notes that she expected to meet Jeannie in this exact place. Jeannie says that she only went out for a little walk. Ji curiously asks if she went out with the guy and demands details about Park. Puck watches Jeannie leave, wondering to himself what could be bothering her. Left alone, Puck thinks that it's time for him to go home too. At least he's hungry. Another new day at school, classes end, students go out and say goodbye to each other. Puck stretches widely in the corridor. He slept well and is ready to start training. On the way to the gym, he thinks that workout is a combination of statics and dynamics, the essence of which is incomprehensible to him. Later, he thinks of approaching his grandfather with this, and at the entrance to the hall he notices a certain unfamiliar girl. Taking a closer look at the blonde, dressed in sportswear, with a sports bag at the ready, he notices that she is a foreigner. Puck comes closer and turns to her with a question about how, and why she ended up here. Noticing Puck, the girl smiles widely and greets him with a joyful voice. She goes through different words of greeting in Korean, says that she is glad to meet him, and Pak's indignation is visible. The girl rejoices at the successful use of memorized phrases for greeting. Puck does not understand what language she speaks. The girl asks if the club practices here, and Puck confirms her guesses. She points to their gym, asking if she came there. Puck confirms that it is indeed a gym. The thought flashes through his head that she speaks Korean well. Puck asks what she is doing here. The girl looks at him, blinking her eyes in confusion. Probably she didn't understand him. He asks to wait a minute while he looks for a translator app on his phone, which he apparently deleted. After some time, while Puck is trying to find a translator, the girl gets an idea. She takes out her phone and tries to find something in it for a while. Finally, the girl calls Puck over and hands him the phone, showing him something on it. The video she showed Genie performing, standing on the board on two hands. Finally, Puck realizes that the girl has come to see Genie, and invites her to wait inside the club. Complaining about the complexity of what is happening, the girl squats down and sighs heavily. A subtle aroma floats past her nose, wrinkled with fatigue. Behind a small fence, a man and his children are preparing sweets together. The girl's gaze is concentrated on the process of making these sweets. Looking at the sitting girl, Puck notices that a waterfall of saliva is literally flowing from her mouth. As soon as the candy is in her hands, her eyes light up with joy. Puck treated her to this candy and asks if she liked it. The girl asks Puck what his name is, and it is clear that she is very happy about the candy she ate. Puck introduces himself by his full name, and the stranger repeats it. Her face takes on a somewhat mysterious expression. It is unclear what she is thinking about, but it is something interesting. Suddenly, a piece of the bitten sweetness flies out of her hands and rushes towards the ground. At the last moment, the girl grabs a nearby bench with her hand and manages to catch the flying candy. Puck watches this from the side and stares at her in confusion. Having caught the candy, the girl holds the perfect bar with one hand on the bench, as if on a crossbar. The strength of her arm is enough to hold herself in this position without even a hint of trembling in her body. Having completed this difficult action, she calmly eats her candy and rejoices, leaving Puck in bewilderment. Genie and Soya approach the hall. Soya extends his hand, greeting Puck. Seeing them, Puck also extends his hand and says hello, and the same stranger peeks out from behind his shoulder. Soya is surprised by the presence of a foreigner, comes up and asks about her. Puck replies that she came to Genie. Genie widens her eyes in surprise and asks if the girl really came to her. The stranger comes closer to Genie, leaning towards her as she goes. Approaching very close, she brings her face close to Genie's and peers at him intently. The stranger, holding her hands behind her back, walks around Genie in a semicircle behind her back. Continuing to examine her, the girl giggles quietly behind Genie. Soya and Park stand in bewilderment. Soya voices her misunderstanding at what the stranger is doing. As usual, Joseph comes out of nowhere with a joyful shout of greeting and joy that everyone has gathered. From behind Joseph's usual glasses, you can see his eyes widen in surprise. At this moment, the lost Genie and the stranger notice him. The stranger, who clearly recognizes him, lights up with joy. Her eyes literally sparkle with joy. Joseph, who recognizes her, does not have time to say a word. His mouth opens, giving out only inarticulate sounds. He shouts her name, Fabian, and at the same moment, shouting his name in response, the girl flies into him with hugs. Park is surprised that they know each other. Secretary Song explains from behind Park that this is Miss Fabian Gracie. Soya asks Song if she knows the girl. Song replies that she is an old fan of Joseph. Fabian is a girl from Spain. He also does workout. This makes everyone seriously surprised. Fabian enters the hall and with her first reaction makes it clear that she is delighted. She speaks of what she saw as something amazing, and moves deeper into the hall, looking around. Puck asks if she is really a player. Soya thinks that she saw her somewhere. She is also the youngest workout athlete in Spain. The dream is just about to introduce her, when Fabian introduces herself and asks to call her simply by her name. Park is indignant that she suddenly begins to speak Korean well again. But Fabian is just teasing her. She speaks 4 languages. With a wink at Puck, Fabian thanks him for the treat, noting that the cookies were very tasty. Puck was confused, blushed, and only confirmed her words. Soya frowned behind him. Joseph simply calls her Phoebe and asks how she ended up here. Fabian came just to see him. When Joseph asks where she will stay, Fabian replies that she will stay at his house, Not that Joseph is happy about that. The dream says that Fabian has been following Joseph since childhood, so she knows his parents well. She is like his sister. Joseph asks why she came to Korea anyway. Fabian replies that she saw the video a few days ago. Fabian gets close to Jeannie again and says she was the one in the video. Fabian notes that Jeannie has impressive athletic abilities, excellent balance, and was just looking for outstanding people. However, Fabian notes that Jeannie's rocking motion is still a little lame. This amazes both Jeannie and Soya and Puck. Fabian immediately apologizes, saying that this is not a reproach, but she decided to be honest. Her moves are good, but it feels like Jeannie hasn't put the moves together yet. Jeannie reacts calmly, explaining that everything is correct. She did not practice freestyle moves. Therefore, she understands everything. But Joseph is now calling and asking to find another room. Fabian asks Jeannie to show her freestyle. After changing into sportswear, Jeannie walks up to the horizontal bar and looks at him. On her mind is freestyle, a sport in which complete movements are judged by mixing several. Fabian happily declares that he will listen carefully and watch from the sidelines. Park, surprised, asks Soya if they listen to music when freestyling. Soya confirms that music gives extra points. Puck looks at Jeannie as she warms up and wonders if she can do it. There was also a mat placed there for the safety of Jeannie's performance. At the signal, Jeannie climbs onto the bar. Music plays and she thinks that she needs to build up her muscles first. Climbing vertically on her hands over the horizontal bar, Jeannie performs her signature handstand. Releasing one hand, Jeannie rotates her arm into a reverse grip. Together with the completed turn, she intercepts the crossbar again. Together with the reverse grip, Jeannie gives the body a vertical position with rotation of the body. Fabian smiles from the side and continues to watch the performance with interest. Having made a full revolution around the crossbar, Jeannie continues her rotation. Once again clearing the bar at the top, Jeannie lets go of one of her arms. By fully releasing the bar, she performs a full rotation of her body in the air. At the end of the lightning-fast rotation, Jeannie successfully grabs the bar again. With the force of her hands gripping the bar, Jeannie keeps her weight on it. Soya opens his mouth, amazed that Jeannie performs such a move. After swinging, she turns and catches the horizontal bar. Beads of sweat appear on Jeannie's face as she marvels at how fast the pace of the performance is. Finally, the performance is nearing the end, and Jeannie needs to come up with one more move. At this moment, her grip weakens and her hand releases the bar. Exhaling noisily, Jeannie lets go of the horizontal bar and freely falls from the horizontal bar. Puck, who sees this, screams loudly, realizing that Jeannie is falling from the crossbar. She lands on her back on the mats placed for safety. Her hair is scattered in different directions. Understanding the situation, she understands that the time for reflection is up. Fabian immediately climbs onto the crossbar, indicating that it is her turn. Jeannie watches from below. The first thing Fabian does is climb over the bar and support his body with his arms extended along his body. Fabian then bends his knees and wraps them around the bar. She leans back, giving her body a reverse rotation. During the rotation, Fabian again aligns himself with the line of the bar without straightening his knees. Her muscles are tense. It is clear that she is going to continue pumping. With a slight push, she releases the bar from her hands and rotates around it, holding only her bent knees. Moving to the beat of the music, Fabian stares at the ceiling with a smile, keeping his neck moving evenly. Raising her head to the ceiling, Jeannie watches the performance from below with her mouth slightly open in surprise. Having finished the rotation, Fabian rises and sits on top of the bar. Holding it with a strong grip, Fabian stretches his legs parallel to the floor. After this, Fabian lowers himself down on his hands, holding the bar behind his back. First, she groups her whole body and then straightens her body parallel to the ground and holds herself on her hands behind her back. Soya notes that this technique is called a back lever, where a person climbs onto the bar and aligns himself with the ground. Joseph, watching from the sidelines, clearly thinks the performance was excellent. One of Fabian's hands tenses up. His fingers literally dig into the bar. She straightens her body parallel to the bar and extends her other arm forward, maintaining a grip with only one hand. Park and Soya open their mouths in excitement as Fabian performs a difficult one-handed back lever move. Holding the reception bar, Fabian looks down at the watching Jeannie. Jeannie looks down at Fabian, taking in every move she makes. Puck reflects, the completion of the movements is similar to Jeannie, but the movements and speed change to the beat of the music. The lightness of a pro is felt. After the performance, Jeannie slowly stretches her tired arms. Fabian comes up and says that she wanted to see new movements and praises Jeannie. talking about the high level of her technique. However, as a player, Fabian can tell that Jeannie is feeling insecure. What was said amazes Jeannie. She clearly did not expect to hear such a thing. Fabian apologizes for being direct, however. He says that Jeannie saw her training style, and Jeannie's style is not satisfying to watch. In simple terms, she says, Jeannie's movements are formulaic. Puck, watching this from the side, can't find anything to say. He thinks about her name and the fact that she is a professional workout athlete. It's 12 o'clock and the afternoon starts at school. School children slowly wander through the corridors, chatting about their own things and going about their business. The dream communicates with school children, explaining that if they want to join the club, they need to approach her. They will accept 5 people at a time. Joseph exhales heavily, quietly saying that break time is over. Sun says that 34 applications were submitted to the workout club. Joseph cannot accept so many, but he is glad that everyone likes their club. Dream asks about how Joseph plans to handle club activities in the future. Joseph hands her a newspaper. She takes the newspaper, unfolds it, and carefully reads what is written in it. Having finished reading, Song comes to the conclusion that it was because of what was written in the newspaper that Fabian came to Korea. Joseph says that Fabian's parents did not send her to another country alone. A team was formed from Europe and they should become stronger. Sun notes that time is short and something needs to be done. Now they only have Jeannie. Hearing that they also have Park, Song is surprised, asking if he can do anything else. Joseph tells her what happened a few days ago. Then evening came, and the event took place in their training room. Joseph, as usual, flew into the hall with a shout of greeting, which scared Park. He noted that Park was training hard. Looking at how he warmed up his hands, Park replied that he should train harder. Joseph rejoices at how hot-blooded the youth are, remembering what he was like in his youth, to which Park invites him to leave. Joseph asked Park how he felt after meeting Kim and his grandfather. It was an indescribable feeling, and Kim taught him a tablet. Hearing about the familiar technique, Joseph gets a little excited. This is a really difficult technique. Park says that he is still practicing, but now he can only hold on for a couple of seconds. Joseph leans over him and laughs, saying that this is not enough, and his technique is not planche. The planche is the ultimate movement of the body. Just as a powerlifter takes years to reach 6,700 feet, the planche cannot be completed in a couple of days. The smug expression suddenly disappears from Joseph's face as he watches Puck, dumbfounded. While Joseph speaks, Puck performs his perfect planche in front of him. However, his plank really doesn't last long, and in the end he almost dies from the stress. Crouching on the floor, he happily states that he held the tablet for 2 seconds and asks if Joseph saw it. Then Joseph was amazed that he really saw the planche performed by Puck. After the story, Song is surprised by Park's skills. Joseph also thought that he was just a funny guy, but was shocked. Now Joseph thinks that he is exactly the one he needs, and he already knows what to prepare for his training. Meanwhile, Puck lazily trudges near the hedge, yawning with his mouth wide open. Joseph says that he still needs to train, but over time they will correct him. Joseph's phone rings. He answers the call and introduces himself. He gets a call from Jeannie's mom. Joseph gets excited and asks what issue she's on. Mom says that her daughter Jeannie is engaged in their club, and recently she saw a video. Joseph immediately understood which video. She thinks that Jeannie should not visit the club. She should not waste her time on any sport. She wants Joseph to remove her from club activities. Joseph wants to know why. Meanwhile, Jeannie looks sadly at the horizontal bar, and her mother says that the next years and months are very important for her. Jeannie is thinking about something of her own, and her mother insists that she not waste time on anything other than studying. Jeannie's hand reaches out to the horizontal bar. As her mother says, she has a soft heart and is easily captivated by any sport. She still hasn't found herself in life. Her mother believes in the conversation. Depressed by today, Jeannie turns Fabian's words over in her head and is overcome by melancholy. Mom tells Joseph she understands that it is not right to do this without telling her daughter. She is just a child now and cannot make decisions on her own, so her mother, as a parent, wishes only the best for her. Meanwhile, G's classes are ending and she is walking with her friend on the way from school. Mom finally says that she hopes for understanding from Joseph and asks for help. G says goodbye to her friend at a crossroads, and they go in different directions. The road leads G into some back alley in an unfamiliar area. She wonders why the girls asked her to see them here, since they don't live in the area. A scream is heard from the side. A familiar voice calls out to G from behind. G's face is distorted with anger. From the very first moment she realized who called her. The one who called out turned out to be the same red-haired schoolgirl with whom they had recently fought. Besides her, the red-haired girl's friends are also behind Ji's back. This is an obvious ambush. Ji is surrounded on both sides. The offenders look very self-confident. Ji asks the red-haired girl opposite what she's doing here. She explains with anticipation that she was talking about revenge, and today that day has come. Ji is indignant that the first time was not enough. She threatens that if she continues, she will paint her face beyond recognition. The redhead grins and chuckles, saying that the fight is a little different this time. A lot of guys come out from behind her. She brought her brothers, and asks if Ji can defeat them. This outcome puts Ji into a stupor. From the outside one can hear that the guy notes her hot temper. This guy looks at her with a piercing gaze and says that if she is calm, then no one will beat her. Of course, this only inflames Ji, and she gazes intently at the offenders with a stern gaze. She turns around and looks over her shoulder at the boards standing nearby. While people are saying something about her calmness, Ji grabs the board. Calling the offenders vile bastards, she throws this board in their direction. Getting close to the redhead's friends, she hits them with her gym bag. Throwing her things there, she runs away, and the offenders rush after her. She runs very quickly, looking back and noticing that they are running after her. In an instant, soon enough, she crashes into something and lets out a loud yelp. Opening her eyes after the blow, she examines the person she hit, asking who it is. This person turns out to be Puck, who gets in her way, coming around the corner. Puck looks down at her and asks if she's okay. Ji pushes slightly and steps around Puck, demanding that he get out of the way. The redhead shouts to the guys not to let go of Ji, who is running away. Her path is again blocked on both sides. Along with a sharp blow, the metallic sound of the bat spreads throughout the area. The guy with the bat asks where she is running and assures her that this abandoned factory is like a labyrinth, but he knows this place very well. In other words, explains the bully with the bat, she won't get out even if she runs away. This makes Ji very angry. She clenches her teeth tightly, and is clearly nervous. Puck calmly asks how she feels. She replies that she already told him to leave and not disturb her.